Welcome to Crimson Tales. Support me by subscribing my channel and like, comment, share my videos. Harry was fuming, quietly, though in the smallest room in Privet Drive, he could hear the TV in Dudley's bedroom blaring something out about the latest gangster shooting. It seemed so normal for a teenager to be hearing about killings overseas, but not actually seeing it. Except Harry wasn't like normal teens, as his only family left loved reminding him every day, despite what the Order in all its uselessness had said. Harry looked over at Hedwig's cage. She had gone out hunting again. Better than stay in the room with him staring at the ceiling. Glancing out the window, Harry returned to thinking about the end of the previous years. School, the events that had shaped his life, the adventure, the danger. Harry started to drift off into a dreamless sleep-like state, except the dreams and mindless wanderings kept coming. Dumbledore saying he had to learn occlumency. I accepted that as being the truth. Harry thought to himself in his lucid state. It seemed like the best course of action, but with Snape... Why, Snape, surely occlumency isn't a skill that rare in the magical community. He had the whole Order to choose from, and he chooses Snape to teach me. Why? Harry thought angrily in the white space of his mind. Why, indeed, Cub? Harry whipped around to see a black grim bounding out of the void. Say, Race, Harry said, stunned for a second, the grim changing back into his godfather. Hello, Cub, Sirius said, tilting his head as to greet Harry. You're not dead? Harry smiled, hopefully. Noah, Bella shot me. You know that? I fell into the veil. There's no escape from that. Then what? Harry knew he would have had tears in his eyes, but he had cried so many times over the past week that none seemed to want to come. I'm an afterimage left in your mind, an impression from all the times we spent together, something to help you work this through. Sirius walked over to Harry, two chairs appearing between them. He gestured to Harry, taking one for himself. So you're not real, and I'm just talking to myself. Harry stared at the chair for a moment before taking it. Everyone talks to themselves, Cub, but this, he gestured the void, that had now become a study with a silently crackling fire, is where you can work stuff out. Stuff that's been going on this past years, things you already know yourself. You just need to work it through. Think of me as a foil. Bounce ideas off. Harry thought about this for a moment. He knew that magic was part of him, that it was part of the world. Could this be magic? Or was it just his subconscious working the events through? You've already started to think about it. See, I'm a bit of both. Maybe I'm one or the other. It shouldn't matter. Just work the ideas through. It'll all work out. So what's troubling you, Cube? Sirius, or whatever he was, leaned back in his chair and glanced into the fire. Was it my fault you died? Harry said, staring with newly formed tears in his eyes. He wanted to be sure. You already know the answer to that one, but let me tell you what you've already been thinking. Dumbledore said you should learn occlumency to protect you from Voldemort. Sirius paused, waiting for Harry, and he got the one person who has hated me from the get-go, him, Snape, to teach me. Yes, and whilst you tried with him, he pushed and never helped. Dumbledore didn't either. He didn't stop Umbridge or Snape. Why? Sirius looked into Harry's eyes, waiting for him to answer. Why indeed? Harry started to ponder this. Why didn't Dumbledore help? He was the supreme mugwump after all. Why didn't he help you initially? Why did Dumbledore disappear for so much of last year? Why wasn't he there during the Philosopher's Stone incident? Why was it me and Ron that went down into the chamber or secrets in what was supposedly the safest school in Great Britain? Sirius nodded at Harry. Harry could feel the gears in his head shift into gear, looking back on the events that had shaped that past few years. Dumbledore was always there. Never when he needed him most, but always to put the right hand on his shoulder, always ready to say the right things to him, to push him, to make him put his trust in Dumbledore. I can almost hear the gears in your head shifting. Sirius reached forward to and poked the fire with the metal stake. It crackled, making noise for the first time. Oh my God! Sirius, he was there every way, all the times, guiding me, pushing me. Harry felt sick, now that he was working it all out. He will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. Harry whispered the prophecy to himself, thinking back over the trials he had faced, summoning Godric's sword, killing the basilisk, showing the ultimate mercy to his parents' betrayer, defeating Quirrell. Even the DA becoming a leader, believing in people, fighting Voldemort all of the time. Yes, Harry. He's been sculpting me, leading me in the right direction, making sure I was for the light all the way, ready to go just outside the lines when he wanted. He wanted to see how strong Shay was. He kept you locked up, knowing you'd come. I think I'm going to bed sick. Harry said slowly. Yes, I would too if I were in your position. I guess I am in many ways. Why would he do this? Why? Harry whispered into the fire, not trusting his voice. You know, you've heard the prophecy. Come on, think it through. What does Dumbledore like? Sirius stood up next to Harry, staring at the dancing flames. Sweets? Sirius chuckled. Deeper, cub, what does he do? Both officially and unofficially. He's the headmaster and he's the head of the Order of the Phoenix. Harry stared back into the fire, not thinking. And what do those two things give him? What did those two things give him? The ability to be odd, deranged, slightly mad at the best of times. He did defeat Grindelwald, but what? You're getting there. Why can't you tell me? Harry looked irritably at Sirius. He looked back, arching his eyebrow. Yes, I know, just a foil. What does that give him? He already has a reputation. Harry stared off, thinking about all the events. Control, he has ultimate control over what we learn. He's also the head of the Order. That means he's got power over the school, and his own little militia for this war. But that's not it. Why me? I'm the power. He wants to control me. But I'm distressed. I smashed up his office. I'm all alone now. He's been there all along. But right now, I'm outside his control. What? He's going to want me in his control. Harry was getting into the idea, not in a good way. So he's going to do something for you. Something you wanted from when you learnt about it. He's going to offer me something prestigious. Something he thinks I've wanted all along. Harry chuckled, pulling himself out of the chair. He's going to induct me into the Order of the Phoenix. It dawned on him, Harry Potter member of the Order of the Phoenix, a sign to all in the wizarding world that Albus Dumbledore had Harry Potter on his side. But, his psyche or Sirius said as he paced around the room, but he doesn't just need me. He needs to know what's going on with Tom. Why did that come into my head? Harry said, looking at Sirius. Yar's thinking now, pulling all these ideas together like string, you start to make connections. What connects Dumbledore and Tom besides your good self? Harry walked back to his chair, but continued to stare at the void behind Sirius. Snape taught me occlumency. Snape is Dumbledore's most trusted spy. Snape is obviously good at what he does, or Tom would have spotted him ages ago. Snape was asked by Dumbledore to teach me occlumency. Snape told me to clear my mind, opening it. It was like a huge set of doors, slammed open as Harry understood it all. Oh, the shit. The absolute arsewhip. Dumbledore wanted some way to see into what Tom is doing. Snape doesn't see everything. He wants a conduit. Someone to see through his eyes. Harry was breathing hard. It wasn't to protect me, it was to open me up to whatever he sent down the link. Dumbles would be there to comfort me, and I'd feel like a member of the Order giving information. I'd be controlled, sculpted by him, ready as a final weapon. Harry sat down with a thump. He could hear a tapping. He assumed it was the fire. So I worked it out. On your own. Sirius, you're not really here. You're dead. Harry looked up, sadness in his eyes, but no longer upset or angry with himself. Yes, you know it. And now you're thinking, where do you go now? Yes. Yes. There was a tapping again. Harry still ignored it. Think about it. He's going to give me time, though not too much. He wouldn't want me to figure it out. But I can't do anything. Yes, I can. What did Hermione say? There's loads of old books that aren't even in the restricted section in the Black Library. Funny thing, Memory, you remember things that you weren't even paying attention to. Sirius got up and started to walk away. Where are you going? Harry ran to catch up with Sirius as they walked further into the void. There was louder tapping. I'm always here. I am you. Just think about everything that happened. You need to get around the fences that they put up before you can explore the forest. And I thought Dumbledore was cryptic. Now I'm doing it to myself. Tap. What is that noise? An owl, Sirius said and disappeared into the void. An owl who could... Oh, so he wants me to come. Harry nearly fell out of his bed. He rose so quickly. All the information he had worked out still in his head. He went to brush tears away, as had become the norm, after his dreams of Sirius, but found that there were none. But he did remember all that he discovered. Maybe it showed in his eyes. Hedwig gave a mournful hoot and looked to the window. Harry followed her line of sight and saw a brown school owl frantically tapping on the window. He pulled off the letter. Harry, while Sirius's death must still lie heavily on you, I must ask you to listen. There are things that you now know that no one should even have the possibility of finding out. As such, the Order will be bringing you to Grimmauld Place in 2 weeks. I believe this is the best course of action. Disregard any mail from anyone besides myself. The owls are not safe. Burn any letters you receive. It is essential you do not communicate with anyone. Do not leave the house. It is not safe in the current climate. Albus Dumbledore. Harry glared at the letter before opening the window, letting the owl out. Things were going to change, but first Harry needed to work out a plan for himself. Harry awoke after a particularly better night's sleep than he had previously. He started to go back over his memories of the past few years. That's one good thing that's come from Voldemort's visions, Harry thought as he pulled on his cousin's oversized hand-me-downs. He could remember a great amount of detail about things that he didn't pay attention to the first time around. Harry winced again as he touched on a memory of Crucio. He was going back through his mind and memories whilst he lay in lucid sleep. A clemency is what I need, Harry thought, looking around the void, thinking back the vision of Sirius again. The potions lab formed around him. He was looking at Snape, pointing his wand at him. He tried to fight it, just like the last time Snape had attacked him. Then he was inside Snape's mind, the memories. But just before he went in, he saw something. Something he didn't notice when he was fighting Snape back. "What's this then?" said the spider to the fly. Harry thought to himself as he halted his memory of the memory. Everything stopped like a pause on a video. He walked around and mentally pushed everything back, like steps back up some stairs. He saw the edges of the beginning of Snape's memory and then a very dim room. Harry stopped his walking, looking around the room. It was very much like the potions lab, but not just the feeling that Snape always imbued into the room. There were about 20 trunks, all with locks on them, all with labels. How did I miss this? He looked at the trunk, which was in the middle of his memory. It was marked childhood. He could see just in the periphery of his vision, one with Hogwarts and another close by it with James Potter, practically scrawled across on them. Looking around, he could see other trunks in the distance. This is what a clemency should look like, Harry thought to himself, realization dawning as he found himself waking up. So I've got 2 weeks until, he was about to say the manipulating old fool comes, but heard crunching of footsteps out of his window. Do not leave the house, Harry whispered much to himself as he leaned out his window, looking down to the front of the house. A pot plant picked itself up, seemingly repairing itself and settling back near the door. So, he is having me watched. At that moment, Hedwig chose to return to his room, bearing a package that looked to Harry's mind like a small coffin. Could someone be sending me a shrunken head with a shrunken body? Harry muttered sarcastically to Hedwig, then thought about what he had said. Too much time going over thoughts? He looked Hedwig in the eyes. The snowy owl stared back, meeting his stare. It's safe, isn't it? Hedwig, I doubt someone is posting me Lestrange's shrunken body. It's not even my birthday. Way too much time going over stuff. I wonder if that's Snape's or Valde's sense of humor. Not good either way. Then Harry paused in thought. Maybe it's mine. Harry undid the package and let Hedwig go over to her cage. He filled her water from the bottle on his desk. As he unwrapped the package, he could hear something liquid inside it. It turned out be 2 packages. The first was glass and a letter folded inside. The second was the oblong box. Harry, we won't say anything. But one thing our fellow marauders did say is that life is to live to have fun and enjoy. That's what you should be doing. This is an incentive. So try to have at least a little bit of fun on us. We're in the business of it after all. Don't drink it all in one go, although if you did, it would be impressive and messy. Welcome to Weasley Wizard Wheezes. And remember, most problems have answers, or at least other paths. Think about it. Don't always follow the most obvious that's what they want you to see. Fred and George. When did they get so knowledgeable? When you gave them the chance to be and do what they wanted, his internal voice seemed to say. Unwrapping the rest of the package, he could see the box. He could see a warning in large letters. Warning, compression box. Item will expand 50% when removed from box. And written in smaller writing, no wand necessary, will hold anything, no animals or people, little brothers accepted, no not really. The box felt like cardboard or possibly wood as he opened it and grabbed a hold of the neck of the bottle. As he pulled it out, it felt like and appeared to be a large bottle of a ready golden liquid, fire whiskey aged 300 years. Oh dear, was all Harry could say, as he looked from the whiskey to the box and back to the glass. The glass had a design around it, which appeared to be a series of dolls and every so often seemed to merge out of the design. Harry looked at the clock on his bedside. It only just worked as Dudley had smashed it when it woke him up. 8:30 a.m. Probably a little too early for a drink. Harry pondered. Just a sip won't kill me. Much, he thought to himself, pulling the glass closer and unscrewing the odd-shaped cork. He poured hardly any into the glass. Enough to cover the bottom, no more. Replacing the cork, and he looked at the box, and then back at the bottle. The bottle was at least half too big for the box. He picked up the bottle again by the neck. It can only break the box. With that, he went to force it back into the box. Surprisingly, it slid effortlessly back into the box. Brilliant! Absolutely brilliant! He set the box down on his bed and looked at the crimson liquid. Smelling it, he found it smelt rich and old, comforting and warm. Harry shrugged. It won't kill me. Then he downed the small amount of liquid. He had expected something bad, but considering all the potions he had been forced to take over the years, it wasn't surprising that he had expected the worst from the wizarding world in liquid form. It tasted like it had smelt. He felt warm, like there was a fire in his stomach, but also contented. It was nice. Probably not good in huge doses, but a good feeling. It made him ready for the world, but it relaxed him nonetheless. A bit oaky, he blurted out. Think first, then talk. The voice seemed to say. Digging through his trunk, he found his money bag, with a bit of money in it, and his invisibility cloak. He looked to the bed, focusing on the box. Grabbing it, he put it in his trunk and locked it. Can't have Doodly knocking it back. He might turn into a dragon. Actually, Harry looked back at the trunk, briefly imagining a giant dragon burning his aunt's flowers. He wants me to stay inside. What do you think, Hedwig? This can't be the fire whiskey talking. It just gives me an excuse. Harry smiled as Hedwig just looked longingly out the window. Yes, I thought the very same. Harry put his money bag in one pocket and his wand in his front pocket. Constant vigilance, he could hear Moody say. He looked around his cupboard and found an old backpack. He put it on, then the invisibility cloak onto his shoulders. Bye, Hedwig. He opened her cage. I'll be back sometime tonight, maybe this afternoon. Go out if you want. Try not to get into trouble. Hedwig merely nodded and to say to him, You too. With that, Harry pulled on his shoes and slowly walked out the door and down the stairs. There were no trick or squeaky stairs in Privet Drive. Harry knew, after last summer's fixing them, he slowly walked through into the kitchen. He passed the sink, grabbing a cup and filled it water and slowly opened the door to the back garden. It looked deserted, except as he himself was invisible. Knew it wasn't. Harry chucked a bit of the water to the left and the right, and then straight ahead. It didn't hit anything. Just a guard on the front. He must think I trust him. Harry walked out the door, quietly shutting it, and walked slowly but purposefully to the back garden, where it backed onto the laneway and pushed the fence boards that Dudley had broken and Harry had been ordered to fix. There was still a small amount of loose boards. Harry carefully prized them apart. Having one further look around for order members, he carefully squeezed through and found himself in the laneway. Pulling off the cloak and stuffing it into his bag, Harry walked down to the end, where it met a minor road. Now what? Harry thought, looking around. Harry pulled off his glasses to clean them on his not-so-clean shirt. Looking around, everything didn't seem as blurry as the last time he did so. How am I going to get to Diagon Alley now? He unconsciously tapped his scar. I'm Stan. This is the night bus. A memory of a short time ago seemed to jump up rudely at him. The night bus, of course. Why didn't I think of that? Harry messed up his hair so it covered most of his forehead down to his eyes. Can't have anyone recognize the great Harry Potter, so just pull out your wand and pretend to hail a bus. Harry said to no one as he pulled out his wand. For a second, nothing happened, and then it was like the wind in the laneway changed. Welcome to the night bus, Stan said, from the stairs. Harry tried to deepen his voice as he tried to look down on Stan, despite the size difference. To London, if you don't mind? Damn, was that a Snape voice? Harry thought as he reached for his money bag. Stan seemed unfazed by the Snape impression. Which part of London there? The Harry stalled for second. The Leaky Cauldron. Harry almost said Cretin at the end, but stopped himself. Way too much time thinking about Snape's mind. Harry paid without a second look and settled down on one of the chairs, which replaced most of the beds on ground floor. He was vaguely aware of Stan saying there were beds available upstairs. The chair was a nice old leather armchair, like the ones in the common rooms. Staring out the window, Harry started to compile a list of what he needed to get and do. What do I need? Money, English, and wizard. What else? Harry looked down at what he was wearing and what was on his feet. Clothes and shoes. What else? Harry started to think back to the various conversations he had had with the professors and Dumbledore. I'm sorry, Mr. Potter, only a parent or guardian can sign the form. You have to return to your relatives. They are, after all, your only living family and your guardians. This bloody census. Don't know what the government is thinking. Amount of people in household. Describe. 3. That freak doesn't count. Vernon 4. If any people inquire, they'll find out the freak is here. The police, they'll want to know about him. They can't come here. See him. We are your guardians, boy, and as such you will do what we say. Independence. In wizarding and normal world. Harry realized he was patting his wand all the while, maybe a second wand. He looked down at the ripped backpack, thinking back to his trunk. Wonder if there's a more comfortable way to carry things around than a trunk. So money, clothes, wand, independence, something to carry stuff around in, and maybe something else, Harry thought to himself as he idly played with his hair. The outside of the bus started to become less streaked, and Harry recognized it as the alleyway entrance to the Leaky Cauldron that he had used 3 years ago. "The Leaky Cauldron, London," Stan announced as Harry walked briskly past him, not even looking as he threw Harry a bad look before looking around and getting back into the bus. Harry turned and watched the purple bus speed off into the busy London traffic. Pulling on his invisibility cloak once more, Harry strode slowly into the Leaky Cauldron, carefully negotiating the haphazard set out of the pub and into the back alley. Harry looked around before quickly tapping the bricks, depositing his wand back into his front pocket, and making sure the cloak kept him fully hidden. As the bricks opened, Harry made his way through into Diagon Alley. Not very busy, Harry thought, looking up at the clock. It was just past 9:30 a.m. Obviously not early risers, most wizards, Harry thought to himself, thinking of Ron spending most of the holidays sleeping away. Although early, and despite the lack of wizards on the street, most of the shops were open, including Gringotts, which, unlike most of the shops in Diagon Alley, didn't have any open and closing times. Once Harry was inside, he slipped the cloak open, revealing his front but not his back, and strode up to one of the goblins behind the counter and handed him his key. "Name," the goblin said without looking up at Harry. "Harry Potter." The goblin looked, his eyes widening very marginally in surprise at Harry, handing him back his key as he did so. "Mr. Potter, just a moment," then ran off to the depths of the Gringotts. Harry fingered his wand nervously, knowing that he couldn't use it. Didn't help his nervousness. Harry looked around, however, the bank was completely empty apart from goblins. In Harry's searching of the room, he failed to notice a goblin had arrived in front of him. "Mr. Potter, if you could come this way." "Is there a problem?" Harry said, keeping his voice neutral but inquiring. "No, Mr. Potter, just some business to discuss." Harry was led to a large office with another goblin sitting behind the desk. "Mr. Potter, my name is Grasp. I am head of our legal and financing department." Grasp motioned for Harry to have a seat. "Grasp, how are you?" "Better start off on a good foot." Grasp looked stunned for a second, before continuing to stare at Harry. "Uh-oh, maybe they're not morning people." "Is something the matter, Grasp?" Harry said nervously and wondered if he could make a run for it. The door wasn't that far from where he was sitting. "No, Mr. Potter, just your question to me quite by surprise. Most wizards do not care for personal niceties toward us way or the other, just that their money is safe. I am quite well. Yourself?" "Very well, thank you, although I'm not sure why I'm here," Harry said, looking around. Grasp pulled out a piece of parchment. "Mr. Potter, as I am sure you are aware, Sirius Black has passed away. Gringotts has been holding his will, and it has just recently come into effect." "Why just?" "Mr. Potter, you said just come into effect. I was wondering the meaning," Harry said, thinking back to his vision of Sirius. The thought of his death no longer made him sad. He remembered the happy times that they hurrays, and no longer focused solely on his death. "The ministry waits a certain length of time whenever any known fugitive has died. That time has passed for the last 5 days. We sent you 2 owls informing you of the will. I understood that was why you came." Grasp was looking at Harry intensely now. Harry, however, was thinking over the last few days. There had been no owls except Dumbledore's and the twins, and Hedwig had retrieved that. "Grasp, I don't mean to contradict you, but I haven't received any owls from you or Gringotts," Harry said as honestly. Grasp looked worried for a moment, before reaching across the desk and flicked a switch. A second goblin came into the office. "Tackle, bring the owl pensive from the files. Make sure to have the 2 memories from the 2 owls sent to Mr. Potter put in." Harry was about to ask what this was about, when Tackle reappeared, pushing a trolley with what looked like a pensive with a screen attached to it. "Mr. Potter, if you could please watch the pensive with me. We may be able to locate the letters that were sent to you." Grasp walked over and pushed a lever in front of the pensive, right, which seemed to put the pensive memory into play. The picture was bobbing up and down. Harry assumed that it was from the perspective of the owl. He realized that it was dropping down to street level. He recognized it as the front of number 4 Privet Drive. The owl flew down to the ground and then up to his window. Then there was a flash of purple light and then the owl took off again. Harry thought, presumably back to Gringotts. "It seems, Mr. Potter, someone intercepted our letter." Grasp looked somewhere between pissed off and bewildered. Harry, meanwhile, was staring into the misty pensive. Thinking back through the memory in his mind, he could have sworn he saw something. Several somethings, but it was all going too fast, and he could hardly hearts Grasp to let him have a kip to work it out. Mr. Potter? Oops, thinking again. Grasp. Sorry, I was just thinking. Could we watch the memory again, but this time, go slower through it? I believe I saw something the first time around. Grasp merely nodded at the controls. This lever controls the speed and direction of the pensive memory. A recent addition to many pensives, a recent addition, I believe, from a half-blood. Harry walked over and pushed it forward into full motion, pulling it back so it was barely moving as the owl swooped down. He stopped it as it was about to swoop up. There was something by the door, something shimmering in the early dawn light. Grasp! Do you see that? Harry pointed to the point next to the door. It was shimmering like a mirage. Harry was racking his memory for where he had seen it before. He dropped his hand down to his cloak, playing with the edge. That's someone in an invisibility cloak. Harry almost yelled, but then went back to pushing the memory forward, step by step. He stopped it when the owl drew level with the window. He could see a figure reflected from the street below in the window. It was someone pulling a wand out, but as the owl made it onto the windowsill, the perspective disappeared. Pushing the lever back to the left, he wound the memory back, so he to the point where the memory showed the wizard pulling his wand out. There, Grasp, a wizard pulling out his wand, in the window. It seems he's on the street. Grasp was looking amazed at Harry, unable to see because Harry was so close trying to see clearer. Can't see who it is, he's got a beard and robes on, but he's in the shadow. Harry realized how close he was standing to the screen. Sorry, Grasp. I got a little carried away there. You were trying to say something. Harry took a step back to look at the goblin. Mr. Potter, I just wanted to say that no one had noticed anything aside from the purple light. It seems that you have many people watching over you. Grasp said, trying to gauge Harry's senses. It wasn't what he expected. Harry laughed or something between a short laugh and a snort of disgust. Yes, I know, nothing of it. I didn't expect them to sink that low fire spells at owls. Grasp, you said there was a second memory. In here? Yes, Mr. Potter. If I could ask, who is them? Harry looked at the pensive again. Let's have a look at this second memory. I want to confirm my suspicions first, and I have some rather bad ones. Harry said, motioning Grasp to play the second memory. It went much like the first, but it was at night. Harry could hear the change in surroundings, the owl's natural ability to hear, coupled with its magical eyesight enhanced at night. It flew up to the house. The wizard was easily seen and fired off similar purple shot. However, the owl did not lose consciousness. Instead, it flew over to the wizard, dropping its letter, then settling on the wizard's arm moment. It then took off a bit uneasily and the memory ended. Harry looked half angry at the memory. Grasp if you don't mind. Harry motioned for the controls, winding it back just before it took off. He could hear something. God, can't, Harry, this return, the wizard seemed to say. Harry wound it back, listening again, the same result. Grasp, can we, make this louder? Grasp pointed to a knob that Harry missed on the side. Turning it right up, he played it again. Instantly, the room was filled with a lot of noise, of cars, of the wind, and then as it flew near the wizard and landed before taking off, Harry heard it all. Gringotts! There was a tearing sound. Can't let Harry find out about this. Return. Harry grabbed the knob, turning the sound down whilst he manipulated the controls, winding it back to when the owl first encountered the wizard. You could clearly see his face this time. He stopped the memory there before sitting down with a thump into the chair. Grasp stared at it for a moment before returning to his own chair at the desk opposite Harry. So you see, Grasp, the illustrious Albus Dumbledore, Harry said, gesturing at the owl pensive with his hand. As you say, Mr. Potter, this sheds some light on a question I was asking myself. A day after we sent the first letter, Mr. Dumbledore came here asking for Mr. Black's will, claiming that he was here with her. Your permission to claim everything. He also wanted all copies of the will and everything pertaining to the Black estate. Grasp looked at Harry expecting surprise. Wizards were usually angry at least when money and theft were involved. Harry Potter merely sighed. Grasp arched his eyebrow and looked Mr. Potter in the eye. When you first mentioned that my letter were being intercepted, I could only think of 2 people. No, maybe 3 people vindictive enough to do it. It surprises me a little that it was Dumbledore, but not idle unexpected. I've been doing some thinking over the last few days, so not really Grasp. The fact that Dumbledore came here wanting it doesn't surprise me in the least. I think I should be, though, so what will happen now? Harry said, motioning the pensive. Albus Dumbledore will be brought up on charges of interfering with official Gringotts mail, attempted fraud, and an assortment of other charges. Harry brightened at that thought, but then again he needed a few fees first. Grasp, could we go over Sirius's will? But before we do that, could you hold off on any action? Those pensive memories will keep forever, won't they? Grasp wasn't quite sure what to say, so he asked Mr. Potter the foremost question. Why? Mr. Potter. Harry smiled at the goblin's curiosity. Because. This isn't the first time that Dumbledore had done something like this. It probably won't be the last. But I want to keep a few things in my pocket for when I do confront. This, I think, is just the tip of the iceberg. Can I trust you, Grasp? Grasp was taken aback by this question, as he didn't say anything. Harry continued. There's this Muggle program where they say trust no one, but I think I can trust you. Grasp. Probably most of the goblins here. Harry paused, looking at the surprised look on Grasp's face. Albus Dumbledore is probably a great leader. However, he plays people like pawns on a chessboard, and chess is only ever fun if you're the one controlling the pieces. Let's just say I want to have a wander, and when I'm finished we won't be playing board games anymore. Where did that analogy come from? It's probably vague enough for them to understand. Maybe go and see the centaurs when you go back, Harry's internal voice said as he judged Grasp's face. I think I understand, Mr. Potter. No wizard has had faith to put trust in us in a very long time. I'm not like most wizards. Not unless other wizards have prophecies, a genocial maniac, and a controlling wizard after their lives if there was he really needed to meet them and compare notes. So Grasp, Mr. Black's will. Grasp pulled out a large piece of parchment. Mr. Potter, Mr. Black left everything of the Black estate to you. You're now the sole holder of the Black estate. This includes many homes around the world. There is at least one livable house in mid-country. They were once a very prominent family before the First Great War. Mr. Black also tried to have you emancipated from the magical world, but this was not possible until you are 16. As of now, your magical protector is Remus J. Lupin. Harry stopped Grasp for a moment while he processed everything. What's the difference between a protector and a guardian? A guardian is someone who has the same rights as a parent, and this covers the magical and non-magical worlds. A protector is just for the magical world. Previously to you claiming Mr. Black's will, your rotor was a... Grasp stopped for a second before looking at Harry. Who? A Mr. Albus Percival Wulfric, Brian Dumbledore, of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Shouldn't have asked, Harry muttered. As of today, a separate account has been opened in your name. Separate, that is, from the Potter account from which you currently have a key for. All the money from the Black account has been transferred to this one, as per Mr. Black's instructions. Mr. Black left this note for you. Grasp pushed a simply folded piece of parchment to Harry. Harry, you know and I know. However, I went out having fun or fighting. You should live your life, not the way Dumbledore says you should. Explore, have some fun, and more importantly, live, protect yourself, and enjoy it while you're at it. Go where you want. Do what you want. Fate is for the seers. Anything can wait for a rainy day. And even then, remember an umbrella. Enjoy it, Harry. Enjoy it. Sirius, Snuffles, Black. Harry blinked back. Tears. There weren't many, and these were tears of joy. He was going to go out and live his life. Grasp was looking on sadly. So Grasp, how much did Sirius leave me? Just a moment, Mr. Potter. Grasp pushed a bell and a piece of parchment fed out of a machine on the desk that made a brief clack-clack noise like a typewriter. Grasp pushed the piece of paper across the table. Harry picked up the paper. It looked like a phone number, an international one, with a few extra numbers to spare. The number was almost inconceivable. He knew old families accumulated a lot of interest considering how much the Slytherins boasted, but this was... We've had to open one of our largest vaults. While we decurse the former Black Vault, you can be assured your vault is the most protected in Gringotts. Grasp added into the silence which had formed as Harry stared at the parchment. Harry was barely registering. The numbers were too vast to conceive. He couldn't have ever even imagined that much. If it were possible, his jaw would have hit the ground. Grasp continued in Harry's stunned silence. The figure represents the total Black funds which have accumulated over time since before Mr. Sirius Black's incarceration. Now that you are an active and not under ministry incarceration, you will continue to earn interest at a far higher rate than previous. It was odd, Harry decided as he pushed the piece of paper back across the desk. Odd? It's bloody weird. Numbers that big boggle the mind, let alone the fact that it's an actual physical amount somewhere. Whoa, Grasp. That's a lot. Harry finally found his voice. Yes, Mr. Potter. Grasp wasn't sure right now was the precisely right time to inform the young wizard before him that he was probably one of the richest wizards in Britain at the moment. Many wizarding families that accumulated wealth diversified into businesses and real estate rather than leave it in Gringotts' hands, though the Black accounts had laid predominantly untouched since Walburga's demise and Sirius's incarceration. Well, now I'm going to have to start thinking about some things. Money buys anything. I don't want anything. Living it up in a huge house isn't living. It's Malfoy. Exploring and other stuff. Countryside, not cities. Grasp, sorry, I tuned out there for more than a few seconds. Harry said, finally looking at Grasp again. He merely nodded. Harry felt a tiny slither of a plan forming. It would perhaps throw a bit of a thorn in the side of both Fudge and Dumbledore. Grasp. Being part of the legal department here, you must know about the political arena. Grasp was looking at Harry as though he were mad. Wizards didn't talk like this to goblins. Harry got up and started to pace the room, thoughtfulness on his face. There have to be people who oppose Fudge. I'm guessing he's no friend of the goblins here. No. Short must have struck a nerve. Grasp, I'd like to open an account in a false name if I could. Grasp pulled out a piece of parchment, not even questioning Harry. With that amount of money, no one would... Mr. Potter? Harry was watching Grasp. Sorry, Grasp, you looked a bit apprehensive. Well, I'd like to open an account in the name Snuffles. Could I transfer, 500,000 gallons into it? Do you think that would be enough? Mr. Potter? Enough for what? Harry looked startled for a moment, before muttering, I'm picking up bad habits from the old man. Sorry, should explain. Grasp, I take it you understand, or can delegate someone to the task. I'll willingly pay any price for this. With the money in the Snuffles account, I'd like to support people who oppose Fudge, but more than that, I want to support people who oppose Fudge and have no allegiance, official or unofficial, with Dumbledore. Give them out of the Snuffles account any small donations to help them work against Minister. Not just one, many, if you could. Maybe invest in projects that oppose Fudge. That kind of thing. Sorry, I'm not very good at this. I've been thinking on my feet. Maybe it was the fire whiskey this morning. Grasp was busy scratching everything down and barely caught Harry's fire whiskey comment. Mr. Potter, all of that will be done right away. Is there anything else? Yes. If I could, I'd like to share some of my plans with you. If you could give me your opinion. Grasp was literally taken aback, nearly falling out his chair. Grasp, are you all right? Harry was beginning to wonder what was up with the goblin. Yes, Mr. Potter. Call me Harry. All this Mr. Potter stuff is a bit stuffy. Mr. Potter, wouldn't you rather talk with some wizards about this? I trust you with my money. Grasp, I think some secrets won't go astray, will they? Harry inclined his head to the goblin. No, but I've got all this money. I don't want to live in a great mansion lording over grounds and house elves and stuff. I don't want to become a Malfoy or one of the other rich pure-blooded families. So I think I'll get together a few things. Maybe go bushwalking around, see what's out there. Just in England and Scotland for now. So I'll be needed a lot of wizarding money for today to go find some things, and an equally large amount of muggle money. Also, you wouldn't have a map of wizarding towns, and there wouldn't be some way to access money without coming all the way here every time I needed to. Someone with this amount of money didn't want it. On the contrary, he wanted to walk around forests and towns like a traveler. Grasp knew this day was going to stick in his memory. Well, Mr. Potter, the money will not be a problem. The map of wizarding towns is also not a problem. We keep extensive lists of magical towns and sites, both of which I believe will be useful to you. As for money in each of those towns, there is usually a post office of some sort, which will allow you to withdraw some amounts of money, both magical and muggle. You will simply need to present your key, and it will be placed in a device such as this. Grasp motioned a box on his desk. It reads the key and magically verifies it. Harry looked pleased. Thank you, Grasp. I think that will be all. If I could just visit my vault and get a large sum of money as I mentioned before. Yes, of course, Mr. Potter, I will take you down personally. They journeyed for a long time underground, passing dragon after dragon before coming to rest outside a large old door. It had the Potter crest emblazoned on it. Harry looked to Grasp. Just put your key in and speak your name. The magic will recognize you. My name is Harry James Potter. As he turned the key, the doors parted, revealing neatly stacked piles of money that seemingly went on forever. Grasp, can you join me? Certainly, Mr. Potter. Grasp, I'm not sure how much to take. I'm going to be purchasing some. Harry paused, looking conspiratorially around. No one can hear us down here, can they? No, Mr. Potter. The oldest magic protects this place. Goblin magic. Right, well, I'm going to be making some large purchases. Not all totally legal. I'm going to need a second wand, and some way to remove the tracking charm on my wand I'm using now. Plus, I wouldn't put it past the people I know to put more than one tracking charm on me, to make sure I don't go far. I think I'll also need to get quite a few other illegal goodies. Plus, all my shopping in the Muggle world. So however much in your honest opinion please take out for me. Grasp nodded. Before Harry knew it, they were on their way back to the surface. After changing some of his money to pounds, the amount of which surprised Harry, he now had about 200,000 pounds split between his pockets and bag and a magically lightened money bag with 500,000 galleons inside. As Harry was about to walk outside, he only just remembered to pull on his cloak. Peering outside Diagon Alley was beginning to start business, but was still not busy. Harry pulled on his invisibility cloak and walked confidently out of the bank. Harry ended up walking past Madame Mackin's robes for all occasions. It looked too stuffy, too formal, too wizard, Harry thought to himself, walking past all the shops in Diagon Alley. Too much prime and properness, too much molly coddling. He didn't want to go looking for danger, Harry rationalized as he walked around slowly, thankfully invisible. He just didn't want to be shrouded away from life by the likes of Dumbledore, and even people who meant well like Mrs. Weasley. Merlin knew how Bill and Charlie grew up and were able to escape the nest. In Harry's wondering, he had walked beyond Diagon, and was now in the seedier Nocturne Alley. It didn't seem so intimidating now, as when he had appeared in Borgin and Burke's. Now it just seemed like an extension of what was in Diagon. More interesting, more gritty, more précis. Maybe this is the feeling of wealth getting to me. Something caught Harry's eye. It was a smaller laneway, which came off of Nocturne Alley, a door and a half in width. It stretched down a short distance, but it had piqued Harry's interest. It contained entrances to various shops, what looked like a specialty potion and apothecary, an artifact store, which seemed in the same vein as Borgin and Burke's. But it was the store that Harry was now looking into. The sign above read Lyle and Kristoff's, purveyor of quality fabrics and specialty wearables. Well, this looks like somewhere better and more interesting than Menkins. Harry's internal dialogue seemed to feel the need to comment on the obvious. Soon, I'll start to talk to myself, he muttered before realizing what he was doing and walked into the store. It was an eclectic mix of fabrics, furs, robes, and various other garments, and not the usual wizarding garb of boring drapery robes either. There were large mixes of pants and shirts and many other things. Just a moment, came a light voice from the back somewhere in the dark. Now how can we help you? Another voice and a person attached to it came out of the depths of the back. The man was about 6', with dark brown hair, stylishly spiked up. He was youngish and wearing a burnt orange shirt and rouge pants. No robes in sight. The setup reminded Harry of Fawkes's tail feathers. Lyle, so there's a customer? A deeper voice and another man came out of the depths. He too wore pants and a shirt, but his was of a dark gray and pants of darkest black, quite tight. Or not. The man Lyle, Harry assumed, said. He was looking around the shop. Harry looked for a moment before realizing he had the invisibility cloak still on, not wanting to take it off, till he could work out their motivations. Hello, yes. Harry resisted the temptation to wave before moving as silently as he could to another part of the shop. Well, I didn't know we had ordered a ghost. I was looking for a completely new wardrobe, actually, but I guess I could stick around as a ghost if you wanted. Harry grinned to himself, not sure why he was grinning. I'm pretty sure we can help. Not a huge amount of passing trade. Why is that? Harry inquired towards the two. The man Kristoff was leaning against one of the counters near the back. This and that, he said, looking in Harry's direction, although Harry looked behind him and saw the door, so it could have been either. Well, I'll reveal myself. Harry was interrupted. Reveal? I usually wait until we've at least left the venue for that. Lyle grinned at Kristoff, who merely raised an eyebrow at him. Harry continued on, raising his own eyebrow at the pair. If I can be guaranteed discretion, Harry finished, trying to deepen his voice back down to Snape quality. Of course, why would we not? We're not like the gossipers in Diagon Alley. Sweetheart, Lyle said as he walked to the middle of the room, Kristoff joining him. Well, not much to lose. Harry walked towards them, pulling off the invisibility cloak as he came level with them. They didn't seem surprised in the slightest. Well, at least he's not a ghost, though. With a voice like that, I wouldn't have minded. Kristoff looked deeply into Harry's eyes. He was getting a weird vibe off these two guys, not unpleasant, but just the weirder side of odd. It had been quiet a minute or two while they stopped in awkward silence. So, Harry started. So, Lyle said, grinning at Harry. Why is it that you don't get many passers-by, apart from being in a small landway? Harry said, setting down his bag and cloak whilst walking around the stands. We're not looked upon highly by a lot of purebloods because of how we mix techniques. I'm guessing you're not a pureblood? Kristoff, who Harry could sense, was looking at something on his back. Harry turned around to face the two. No, but then marrying my cousin and sleeping with my sister has never been high on my list of things to do, especially considering my cousin. They both grinned at each other and then burst out laughing at Harry's deadpan deliverance of the comment. So, mister, Lyle said, pulling out his wand and tape measure, creating a pedestal for Harry to stand on. Harry shrugged. Mr. Lyle said, motioning for Harry to step onto the pedestal. Potter, Harry Potter. Both Christophe and Lyle looked astounded at this revelation. Yes, the boy who lived, great savior, hero to the wizarding world, saving small bunnies from stew, all that crap, Harry said, looking between the two. As you said, actual celebrity is better than fucking your sister celebrity, although that is usually considered good relations between purebloods. So what can we do for you, Mr. Potter? Call me Harry. Right, I'm Christophe, that's Lyle. Christophe motioned for Harry to stand on the pedestal. Right. Well, as I said, I'm looking for a whole new wardrobe. Just curious, but why not Macon's? Christophe said as he conjured a stepladder to stand and get some measurements from height. You had to ask, not happy that we have a customer? Lyle berated lightheartedly. Well, first, I don't want any robes. They are too wizardry. I know, funny me being a wizard and all, but I want stuff that I can wear in the muggle world as well as the wizarding. Robes give you a dramatic exit and entry, but not much else. I'm looking for some pants, which are comfortable, and some nice shirts. I don't own anything muggle, and I'm going out into London later today, so I'd kind of like to wear rather than this. Harry gestured the oversized clothes he was wearing. I'd also like some clothes which are suited to going out and some others which would be good to wear, traveling, bushwalking, and the like. Harry finished without the two interrupting. Well, we haven't heard that before. Usually it's I'm going to a ball, I want something different, or family reunion, or something like that, and not wanting robes. Brilliant. Christophe was looking through the fabrics eagerly. What's bushwalking? Lyle said, as he was measuring Harry's legs. Harry felt Lyle's curious hands slide down his thighs. Well, that's interesting, he thought to himself, concentrating on answering the question. Bushwalking? It's, walking around the countryside, no apparating or port keys, just walking or catching muggle transport. I'm not really sure how I'm going to do it yet, but I want to explore, walk around, disappear for a bit, discover places, Harry, as he thought to himself as he allowed ideas to spawn in his head as he spoke. Well, I've done all the measuring I can do with your pants on, Harry. Lyle said, patting Harry's ass and motioned to get off the pedestal. Hang on, did he just pat my ass? Hey, well, exploring and all that. Well, I think I've got a good idea for your pants. They'd be durable, breathable, they'll look great, and they're super comfortable. Christophe pulled out a deep green, black fabric. It's an experiment of ours. Feel it. It's a weave of dragon hide, acromantinilla silk, and super strengthened cotton. Lyle said, motioning Harry over. All the while, Harry was rubbing his hand over the fabric. It felt warm and yet cool and comfortable. This feels great. It's so, I don't know, I love it. Why isn't there more out there like it? Not much demand for it. Wizards and witches like their robes. Plus the price is a bit, by the way, I hate to bring up money, but Christophe looked at Harry slightly guiltily. Money is literally no object, or it's lots of objects. But yeah, I could buy Madame Mankins if I had the desire to, Harry said. The two shrugged. So what colors would go well with me, do you think? Harry said on a whim. In reality, he didn't have any idea. Blacks and dark greens, maybe some deep dark red shirts. No golden colors. Harry shrugged at this. He had had quite enough of the Gryffindor colors which seemed to invade every part of his school life. So we'll look at 1 or 2 shirts and pants, and then we can start to make it up for you, Harry, Christophe said as he brought out some nice-looking shirts and 1 pair of pants. The shirts are made from a combination of cotton and silk. We don't tell the purebloods about the cotton. They get antsy because it's a muggle thread. Lyle handed a black shirt and the pants to Harry and directed him to one of the changing rooms. A moment later, Harry came out feeling great. The pants were really comfortable, somewhere between baggy and comfortable, and right-fitting and revealing, depending on how he tensed his ass muscles. He liked them. This is bringing out the rebellious side Sirius said he always knew I had. This is great. I really love how the pants sculpt themselves to me. That's dragon hide, and the silk it interacts with your magic. Close proximity to work, so what you want is how the pants are to a degree. Lyle said. Harry could feel him looking at his ass. He unconsciously clenched and felt more snug all of a sudden. I was wondering if you had a cloak or a coat or something. Something with a hood that I could use to shroud my face. Harry turned to look at Lyle. Christophe's just gone to look for something which would fit the bill. Here, try this on. It's basilisk and dragon hide. Black again, deep pockets. The hood can be detached. Only by the wearer it's warm, but breathes the benefit of the basilisk, so it's good for all conditions. The hottest to the coldest day. Harry was staring at the long coat. It looked perfect. Pulling it down, he felt more imposing. With the hood on, he looked indistinguishable and dark and dangerous. So how long would it take for you to make up maybe 7 or 8 pairs of pants and maybe a dozen or 2 shirts? Harry said casually, walking around, only to stop looking down at his heels. The two were surprised at his casual question. That's a big and quite expensive order. Really? Harry looked up surprised. Yes, it would take us probably most of the day. We'd have to close the shop and all, and we're talking quite expensive. Righty? Well, how much for what I've got on? And then give me an estimate of how much the rest. Harry said, walking over to his bag and cloak, picking up the cloak and tension it into one of his pockets. It slid into the pocket much like his fire whiskey box. Well, what you've got on is easily 5,000 galleons. It's the basilisk. It's impossible to get. The last one, the one that Hyde came from, was killed over 40 years ago. Oh, is that all? Harry asked innocently. Do you have a scales, just so I don't have to count out 5,000 galleons? The two guys' eyes went wide before scurrying back to the counter. Harry pulled the magic bag and stared to pour the galleons onto the scales, watching the numbers tick over. It got to 5,500, and he stopped. I'll be back late this afternoon then. Harry looked at the two dumbfounded purveyors before they realized he was talking to them. Yes, that'll be fine, Lyle said slowly. Also, if you could tell no one I was here, even if someone comes asking, just say I wasn't here. Why? Lyle started to ask before being punched by Kristoff. Harry had to smile at the interaction, reminding him of Fred and George, although these two weren't brothers, and given their relationship that was probably just as well. I have minders, people who believe they know best for me, people who want to control me, that sort of thing. Harry switched tracks before they could ask further questions. Even after this lot of clothing, I will probably be back in the future. You're 1,000 times better than Menkins, Harry thought as he remembered the stuffy woman who stabbed him with her wand each time he had robes fitted. Also, do you know where I can find some boots or something? Harry gestured his feet. The change of pace to the complimenting and back to the question had Lyle a bit dazed. Yes, of course. Just across the lane, opposite our shop. Sam's steep step. Mention our names, and ask for something in Dragonhide. It suits you, Kristoff said, motioning at the shop that Harry assumed he missed. Thanks. Harry got all of his money, wizard and muggle, out of his back, stuffing it into various pockets, ensuring he had his wand, and then bid them goodbye. The two were already working furiously. Harry walked across the lane and into the Sam's. It seemed to be decorated in various skins and gave it a very rural look, comforting at the same time. Hi, mate. How can I help you? I'm Sam. Sam had come out from somewhere whilst Harry had been looking around. She had braided blonde hair down to her back. Hi, I'm Harry. Lyle and Kristoff said you're the one to come for boots and stuff. Chris and Lyle sent you over. Cool. So, what are you after? She said. She was sort of like a hyperactive Tonks without the clumsiness. I was looking for some boots, which would be good for a lot of walking. I'm thinking of doing some bushwalking, so I'm looking for something comfortable, but that can pass in the muggle world as well. Sam blinked for a second and muttered, just a moment, and disappeared off into rear of the shop. She came back about a minute later, carried 2 different pairs. One were black and looked like hiking boots, the other was green and had a similar design. Okay, both of these look similar, but the black ones are a bit more stiff, more sturdy, good for hiking. I've used them myself. They're Hungarian hornback hide, 100 galleons. This, she held up the green, is a bit softer, good for running around in. They're lighter than the dragon hide. They're pretty indestructible. They're basilisk, if I'm not much mistaken, from the same basilisk as your coat, which is very cool, by the way. However, like the coat, they're a bit pricey, 300 galleons. She put down both. Sounds good, they're my size, I take it. She chuckled. Never been into a wizard shoe emporium before? Harry shook his head. The magic in the floor interacts with the magic in the shoes. When you purchase them, they mold to your magic and therefore fit you. Right, well, can I take the dragonhide boots so I can wear those in, and I'll just drop the basilisk into Lyle and Chris? They're doing some work for me. Sam just nodded as Harry tipped some of his money onto her scales. He put on the boots. They felt nice and firm and good. He mentioned to Sam she could incendio his old shoes. Ducking into the Lyle and Chris's, he said, thanks for pointing him towards Sam's, and asked to leave the basilisk boots before heading out into the alley. Pulling on the hood, Harry looked in the reflection of the window. You couldn't tell who he was. Harry didn't have any shops in mind, as the only shop of Nocturne he knew aside from the ones he'd visited was Borgin and Burke's. Right. Second wand, removal of any tracking, and some interesting books. On his way, he passed Boarding and Burke's before going deeper into the alley. One narrow shop caught his eye. Xenix's wand, crafting since 0001 AD. It seemed a total opposite to Ollivander's. This shop was small and lit with candles, from what Harry could see, and he felt drawn inside. Upon opening the door, he felt the air inside change, like he was passing through some wards. A man about Remus's age came out of the shadows. "Well, hello there." He had a light Scottish accent. Harry just looked at him from under the cloak and tilted his head. "Hello. I was wondering if you might assist me." "I'm sure I can. You were wanting a few things, I take it." Harry didn't say anything, merely taking out his wand and put it on the counter. Holly and Phoenix Feather. There is power and conflict." He rubbed his fingers along the shaft. "I was looking for several things to have the Ministry monitoring charm removed, plus any other charms which are on the wand or my person removed." The man didn't seem surprised. "Anything else?" he asked in an unsurprised voice. "Yes, a second wand." "Everything has," the man started vaguely. Harry cut him off. "Yes, a price. Good. First a sign," he said calmly. Harry reached into his pocket and dumped 50 galleons onto the counter. "Good." He didn't take the galleons. He put Harry's wand on the counter, pulling his own out, and fired a spell at it. A golden mist came up with runes writing themselves in the air. He fired a similar spell at Harry. Harry didn't have time to react. Well, well, well. There appears to be more than a few tracking spells on you, done by a powerful wizard. These spells could follow you halfway across the globe, allowing for someone to apparate to your location. Very brilliant. A job of an artist. This wasn't a rush job. If I might ask, who put them on? Harry asked, suspiciously. No, but I'm sure the answer would be interesting. No. Could I keep these spells? They are worth exploring, possibly selling. They belong to you even though you did not cast them. They are on you. Keep them. I'm sure it would piss off the caster. But one question. Can you transfer them to something inanimate that I could leave somewhere to make them think they are still on? A hyena was forming in Harry's mind. If Dumbledore still thinks I'm tagged, then I'm home free. Yes, that is very possible. The standard ministry tracking spell and underage wizard charm is removed. You can now cast anything from the simplest Wingardium Leviosa to any of the unforgivables to any complicated charm such as the Patronus. No owls. Nothing. There. It's done. All the golden smoke disappeared and he handed Harry a tin cup. That has all the tracking charms. Thank you. Now a second wand. Yes. In these times, it is best to ignore the ministry. Phoenix and Holly. What do you want this second wand for? I need it. For survival. For war. Harry paused for a moment and then added, to kill, to have fun, to use, and to survive. The Phoenix one suffers from similarities with another. Harry left it at that. Who knew where this guy's loyalties lay? I'm neutral in case you're wondering. Voldemort pisses me off as much as Fudge does. Before Fudge and Voldemort Nocturne used to be an extension of Diagon. When those two came to power, it started to become a haven for the evil wizards. He was, as he talked, laying out various materials. Harry looked on, interested. These are more precise than you'd find at Ollivander's. I will be constructing a wand for you, not merely finding a close match. Now don't touch. Don't even put your hand near these. Just tell me, which calls you? He motioned all the various things in front of him. Harry closed and then opened his eyes a little and looked not at the things in front of him, something which he felt from the back of the shop. The back of the shop, something red, he muttered. The man looked mildly surprised and disappeared before returning, holding a block of red wood. Yes, then also this. Harry gestured at about 5 things all together. Interesting. Basilisk venom, centaur hair, unicorn hoof, the ash of a phoenix, and Australian magical red gum. An interesting mix. His eyes were gleaming. How so? Harry was interested. It was better than Ollivander's vague descriptions. This will be a strong, powerful, and deadly wand. The basilisk venom, power, the centaur hair, strength, the unicorn hoof, speed, and the ash of the phoenix, something extra special. The phoenix in question was on its burning day when about 200 years ago a freak asteroid came down and hit it at the start of its burning. It survived, but this ash is a mix of the phoenix and the asteroid, which assumedly came from another star system. The red gum is from Australia. It's a magical eucalyptus. It in itself is strong and powerful, but together, Harry drifted off to his own thoughts, weighing the cup in his hand. So, Dumbledore put some unique charms on me. Charms that even this guy, Zanak, thinks are good. Obviously, he isn't looking too hard at them. Where would I hide if I were me? Harry grinned to himself in his head. Where would I go that would make Dumbledore panic? I'm probably there. No, he wouldn't panic if I was here. Maybe just away. Drifting out of thought, Harry realized that the man had stopped talking. Recovering from his driftiness, he fixed his eyes on the man. Good. When will it be ready? Late today. It will be quite pricey, though I believe that you will have no problems with that. No. Thank you. I will return later. No need for names, I assume? Of course. One more thing, Harry added before the man turned to return to the depths of his store. Yes? Will the charm stay intact if I or you were to slice this into 4? Yes, I believe it will, although you would need to do it precisely so as to not fracture the charm lines. Harry put the cup on the bench. Could you? I have a rather interesting idea. Harry smirked to himself. The man shrugged and muttered an incantation at the cup. It neatly split into 4 segments like an orange. Thank you. Harry gathered the segments, nodded to the man, and walked out. Harry exited Xanax and started to wander back through Nocturne looking for a trunk shop. He remembered Hermione and Ron talking about it, so it had to be in Diagon Alley somewhere. When he found it, he was surprised that the two would come to it. It was on the cusp between Diagon and Nocturne, but looked bright and inviting like most of the shops on the alley. Hello? He walked straight up to the man, not needing to be coy whilst he was hiding behind the cloak, and as he reasoned he was armed and free to use his wand now. Sir, the man behind the counter walked over. He had short brown hair and was a little older than Mr. Weasley. I was looking for a trunk. Well, that's obvious, being in a trunk shop. That's as clear. What sort of trunk? One for school? He said, gesturing at the trunks near the front of the store. The looked to his, though slightly less battered and broken, thanks to Vernon's car. No, I'd like something with some compartments and a larger area like a room. He would use the room for training and the like. I have a few like that. That's standard ore and business traveler trunks. They were in one corner of the shop. So what do they have in them? Harry followed the man's gaze. The Aura one looked to have a lot of brass on it, but looked like it was more at home on a train than being used. The Traveler was quite embellished. The Aurora has 3 rooms, one which is usually used as a bedrooms, as they are commonly bought by Aurors. They have all the standard charms, allowing them to be tracked only by the owner, most of the time. The Traveler has a large potions lab and an area to hold ingredients. It's usually used by apothecaries. They both have a standard set of 12 compartments, about double the size of the actual trunk. Harry was looking at them. They weren't really what he had in mind. He didn't want a trunk to brew potions in or to have all those charms. He didn't feel all that connected to the Aurors at the moment, not whilst they were under the beck and call of Fudge, and they were cursing McGonagall. He was about to say that none of them fit his needs, when he saw an older trunk right down the back of the shop. It was covered in dust. What about this one? Harry wandered over to it. The man seemed surprised at the question. Not many people are interested in this one. It's a journeyman's trunk. It's quite old. My great-great-grandfather had it for sale. And as the newer trunks were developed, no one was interested. What's it got in it that would make no one want it? Well, from what I remember, it's got 10 compartments, and quite a small room. Nothing on the new trunks. It's about 3 meters by 6 meters wide and long, about 2.5 meters high. Not much demand for something like that. Sounds good. A small area to train in, not something extravagant. Don't want to be trapped inside a trunk room. I want to be outside. Freedom. It sounds perfect. The man was muttering something to himself about most likely the Auror trunk would be best. Sorry? I said it sounds perfect. Can it shrink? Or be shrunk? Yes, on both counts, except the only person who can shrink it is the person who is bound to the keys, which would be the owner, and then you can shrink the trunk just by... He went over to it and pulled the handles out a little, turned them clockwise and put them back in. Then he just seemed to push, and the trunk shrunk. By the time he was finished, he was holding something the size of a deck of cards. That's brilliant, Harry exclaimed. Yes, they knew how to build trunks back then. This one was made for journeymen, people who travel around, walking, not portkeying the distances unknown. So you'll take it? The man smiled gently at him. Yes, I believe I will. The keys you said I had to be bound to them? Yes. He resized the trunk, picking up a box from the interior. Here, inside are the keys. Just hold them and think of opening the lock. It's old magic. Usually there'd be an incantation. But these old things... Harry pulled out the keys and grasped them, thinking of all the locks he'd ever encountered. The locks put on by the Dursleys. The lock on the 3rd floor, the lock with the flying keys, the Chamber of Secrets. They all flew through his mind. The white and purple light around his hands pulsed and then dissipated. The man was gazing at the magic forming around the keys. There, now no one can shrink or, for that matter, move the trunk without your say. So, or it may be thought, it really depends on how you feel about them and the trunk. Old magics. Right? So how much will that be? Harry said, reaching for his bag. 80 galleons. Only 80, but the others are... Harry was surprised and opened his mouth without thinking. The others were 10 times as much. That was the price my great-great-granddad put on it. I think he would be happy that it's finally sold, and to an honest man as well. Thank you, Harry inclined his head to the man and handed him 20 galleons. The man merely nodded to him. Thank you very much, sir. Harry shrunk the trunk and put into his pants pocket. He felt the pants accommodate the as to not dig into his leg. Harry decided to get out of the magic alley and went out into the London proper. Pulling the hood off now that he was in Muggle London, he found it was still a cool day, despite it being summer, and briefly wondered if there were Dementors around. For the next part of the day, Harry visited various stores. He went to Harrods and many other picking up various shirts and things. He then found himself at a camping shop, tucked away down a side street. Looking around, he decided just to go and ask the guy for what he wanted. Hey. Afternoon, mate. The man said he had an odd Australian accent. I'm going to be bushwalking around Scotland and other places for the next few months. I was wondering if you could help me. I'm sure I can. What are you after? Harry counted off the list of things he had in his head. A backpack, tent, cooking stuff, sleeping bag, and also, Harry looked around the empty shop. Some weapons. The man wasn't surprised, didn't even blink. Right. The next 20 minutes was spent finding a big but comfortable backpack for Harry. Despite having hid trunk in his pocket, he wanted to do this the Muggle way. It felt right for some reason. By the end, he had a comfortable and light one-man tent, a warm sleeping bag, so you don't freeze your balls off, the man had remarked, a cooking pan pot, and other things. Then he went over to the store door and locked it, turning over the sign. Harry put himself into a defensive position, drawing his wand under his coat. So, what do you want weapons for? Harry looked the man over, his eyes catching on two things. The chain around his neck. He could just see the tips of dog tags. His belt. It was like Harry's boots. Dragon hide. It was roughly cut, not tailored. So, you've met dragons before, Harry said, drawing his wand on the man. Most wizards wouldn't be seen in a Muggle camping shop, so why? Do you believe in prophecy? Harry said on a whim. No. The man shrugged. Well, neither did I. Let's just say I want to keep myself safe, because others do. I want to protect myself, and I want an alternative to this. He held up the wand. I see. I do have weapons, but why you ask me is another question. When I came in, I was only thinking about maybe a hunting bow, but if you have something bigger and better, then, Harry said, putting away his wand. He could hear Moody shout constant vigilance at him for doing so. I supply people with weapons, shotguns, pistols, things like that. Some other guns for people to fight their wars. I got this, he motioned the belt. Whilst I was in training with a bunch of cadets in Uluru, the man trailed, remembering. It seemed like it was possessed. In fact, it could have been there were two men on it riding it, firing some sort of green light at its head. I think it dive-bombed to kill itself. Straight into the ground, it died in a ball of flame. This was left behind a bit of its tail. A dark skull appeared in the sky before two cracks were heard behind us. Only 3 of the cadets and myself survived that attack, but only 1 of them left. The cadets were sent to psych counseling. I was debriefed by a special member from ASIO. He told me about the Dreamtime Academy, about some of it. He said the cadets would be obliviated. For some reason, I had a faint aura of the dragon, proximity or something. Harry nodded sadly. It seemed that he had witnessed something from the first reign on Voldemort. The leader of those people was thought to be killed years ago. When I was a child, it was me that ended his reign. Now he's back, and there's a prophecy about me and him. His name's Voldemort, by the way. The man nodded and gestured to the back room. I thought I could trust you. The name's Dave. Harry. So, Harry, enough weapons to protect yourself. I hope you've got some money and transport. What I've got in mind is heavy. Harry pulled out his trunk, enlarging it and putting it on the floor before opening one of the compartments. And money isn't a problem. I get these from across Europe, some from the States, a lot just for myself in case they came back. Others I sell, generally cheaper than most, to the people who are defending themselves. He started to tell Harry about the various things. By the end, one compartment was a fully equipped armory. He had everything from small handguns through to Uzis up to high-powered shotguns. Harry had liked the shotguns. He asked if Dave had many empty cartridges. A potion or powder or 2 in them could make for an effective magical weapon. They finished with some high-powered bows and arrows. All this is highly illegal, you understand. Harry merely nodded. He couldn't imagine what Dumbledore would think, or his friends for that matter. As he was paying, he felt the pieces of cup that he still had with him. He was in the army, right? It had ended up costing him about £10,000, but it was well worth it. All the weapons and cooking stuff was in his trunk. The other stuff was in his backpack. Dave, you were in the army. Harry pulled out one of the pieces of cup. Dave looked at it oddly. What are your thoughts on being tracked? Harry caught the odd look on his face. Someone put a tracking charm on me. It's now on this and other pieces like this. I wanted to put this one somewhere. The others are going somewhere else. Where do you think I should put one the pieces? To confuse the tracker. Put it in the recycle bins outside. They're for the restaurant. They go off and get melted down. That could work. Harry grinned. Thanks. Well, I'll be going. I may come back for some extra ammo at some point. This raised some eyebrows. You've got enough in there to fight a large battle. Yes, but I'm going to be fighting a war. See ya. Maybe we can have a drink when this is all over. Without looking back, he whispered in a low Mara at the locked door before walking out the door back towards London and then began looking for a post office. Harry eventually found one in a padded envelope for his piece of the cup. Writing out Aunt Marge's holiday house address on it, he had remembered it because the Dursleys had repeatedly boasted to everyone about it. Sealing it up, he smiled at the old lady working at the counter. Hello, dear. How are you today? Very well. And yourself? Harry was a little tired, but feeling upbeat. Good. Very good. So you'd like the scent to Brighton? Yes, but what's the slowest way it can get there? Harry smiled sincerely. Slowest? Why, dear? She looked at him curiously. I spend most of my time at a boarding school. This is for an old friend of the family. It's her birthday in 2 weeks. She's a bit forgetful, you see, so it needs to arrive at Rose to her birthday. Otherwise, Harry smiled sincerely, seeing the old lady recognize what he was talking about. I understand. Well, I can put it on the side, and then at the end of the week, it'll go in the long-distance packages, which means it'll go the long way around before getting there. Thank you very much. Harry smiled and marveled that he'd been able to keep such an honest face. With the 2 pieces left and his shopping in London complete, he headed back to Diagon Alley, slipping his hood on and headed to the Owl post office, scribbling 2 notes. Dear Buboxton, Salem Academy. A friend of mine said these tracking charms were interesting and unique. Since I have no need for them, it was suggested I send them on to your schools. Scribbling something, which could be a signature, he put them both in the provided boxes along with the piece of cup and went up to the counter. Hello, could I send this package to Buboxton, France and this to the Salem Academy, America? How fast and secure? Huh? Sorry, I've never sent anything overseas like this before. Hawk is quick and secure, pricey though. Owl ranges from moderate to cheap, and then you've got specialized birds for going into war zones and finding stuff in oceans, etc. Hawk, I think 50 galleons for the 2. It's the war, the return of he who must not be named, the man explained apologetically. Harry nodded. Yes, everything seems to be peaking now that he whose name must be hyphenated has returned. Paying, he left the man with the 2 boxes grinning. Walking back out into the alley, Harry thought about what else he needed. Books. Books? Harry muttered to himself under the hood. Definitely not a good thing when you start talking and then repeating everything you say in your head out loud. Not the best thing for a supposedly sane person to be doing. Harry checked his watch. He's bought it from Dave earlier, just after they'd settled the weapons. He guaranteed Harry that it would survive any trips into any lakes that he would do in the future. It was a simple watch that, oddly enough, told the time and several other useful things like stopwatch and other things like that. Harry had looked at the wizarding watches as he came back into Diagon Alley. They were all very glitzy. None of them actually seemed to tell the time in any normal way, just the weird wizarding way which didn't exactly align with the rest of the world. He had a few more hours before it could really be considered late afternoon, so he turned and headed for Flourish and Blotts. After wandering around in the bookshop for a good 30 minutes, Harry discovered that there wasn't anything useful there, nothing much for fun or fighting a war. Oddly enough, he did pick up a book or 2. One on cooking, another of the Hogwarts rulebook, which compared to the heavy tome, Hogwarts A History, was quite light. He picked up some extra parchment and ink to top up his remaining supply at Harry refused to even think in his head. As Privet Drive is home, it was merely a layover. Not that Hogwarts has been the most homely place of late, wizards dropping huge facts about my life on me, Snape and occlumency. With that thought, Harry also picked up 2 old and dusty books on occlumency. Deciding he wasn't going to find anything else of interest, he went and left, the man at the counter glaring at him. Must be the coat. Harry was about to journey back into Nocturne, but before that, he headed back down to Gringotts. Don't really need more money, but I can't hurt to have some extra pounds in wizarding money just in case. Nocturne actually felt like a reprieve from the Diagon's cheery front. It seemed all the more real on this part of the alley. Harry was looking around specifically for a bookshop, any bookshop that didn't sell the stock standard books that Blotts sold. After going in only about 300 meters, Harry came to rest on an old dark shop Forgotten Tomes, Times and the Unwritten. Looks interesting. His subconscious just nodded quietly. The man at the back of the shop, merely looked up inquisitively as Harry walked in. Harry, meanwhile, was getting almost excited. Careful now, you're turning into Hermione. There were dozens of books that he could use, most if not all of them dark or quite probably illegal. But as he was looking through the books, one, right down the back, caught his eye. It was dark green, with a snake up the spine, and seemed to hiss as he made his approach. When he picked up the heavy tome, words began to form on the cover. There is no dark or light, only magic, power, and all that can be performed by powerful wizards. By Salazar Wolferic Artemis Slytherin. Harry almost dropped it in shock, but he hung on to it looking through the book. There were subjects upon subjects including mastering Parseltongue, occlumency legilmency, turning those who would look into your mind mad. Definitely something to hold on to. Harry spent a good hour inside the shop. By the end he had books, and if he were to believe Salazar, Wolferic Artemis Slytherin, magic books on every subject, from attack potions, how battle using only an apothecary to battle techniques, mind attacks, and everything in between. He picked up one book which was simply entitled Fun on Your Own. He didn't want to know what it was, but simply picked it up as a whim. Harry did start to think, whilst he was having admittedly a bit of fun finding all the books that old Dumbles would never let him know about. He did wonder if this was having fun. But I am trying to keep myself safe. He had taken Salazar's cover to heart. He'd always had an inkling. How can magic be light or dark? I did evil, even bad. But light and dark is like trying to separate night and day. By that argument, plants that bloom at night must be evil, and then you wouldn't have ingredients for what are supposedly light potions. Harry still wasn't sure about Salazar, considering one of the Slytherin's pure blood policy. But this could be Harry reasoned this could be another Slytherin. I mean, Harry thought as he neared the end of his browsing, the pure bloods always favored over using family names. The Black family had names that repeated or no imagination at all. The last time I looked at the family tapestry. Reaching the end of the last line of shelves, he grabbed a set of black books, which looked to be on various curses, and placed them along with the other books that he had found on the counter. There were quite a few, but all the while he had been hanging on to Salazar's text, not ready to leave that one anywhere. You have an interesting selection of tomes here, young master, the shopkeeper noted as he tallied up all of Harry's purchases. His eyebrows raised several inches when he saw Salazar's text on the top. I am somewhat surprised that you would take this. He gestured Salazar's book with the end of his quill, avoiding touching it. Harry replied with a deep voice, somewhere between sneering and his own inquisitiveness. And why is that? Every other person who has tried to touch it has said to have described the sensation as like a dementor, squeezing their heart much as though a cobra would its prey. He grinned madly at Harry. It was then Harry realized that he wasn't that old, no older than Remus. Like Remus, he had the same tired look about the eyes. Perhaps the book likes me. It obviously had no effect on you. Harry trailed off, looking around as the man must have touched the books at some point to get them into the shop, unless it was all lawn through magic. Though something about these Slytherin books tells me they probably won't be partial to being floated around via magic. It didn't have the same effect on me as the others, no. But as the text is blank, or sometimes filled with unintelligible script, I saw no reason to keep it for my collection. Harry merely nodded as he read out the total and pulled out his scales like a hungry tiger. Or more like a wolf. Having paid, Harry shrunk the books and put them into his backpack, silently thanking Professor Flitwick for spending 2 weeks in third year teaching the class every day and useful charms. Glancing at his watch, he had another hour before he could pick up his second wand and his clothes. Walking further down the alley, he saw the lane that contained Lyle and Kristoff's and the specialty apothecary, filing that away for later in the day. Harry sought out a fully fledged apothecary. He wanted to poison Snape, maybe turn Dumbledore into a bumblebee. Harry chuckled to himself. There was more than a bit of serious that had rubbed off a little too hard in his subconscious, that was playing games with his imagination. Nevertheless, a bit of knowledge in potions may meh. In whatever job I finally decide to take, Harry muttered as he walked along, looking at all the varied things. He came to stop outside a medium-sized shop. It had no flashy or fancy signs, simply saying apothecary on the outside. Not knowing anything but the basics of his school potion kit, Harry thought. Straightforward lying is the best way. Walking confidently up the counter, he saw the man was only slightly older than Charlie Weasley's age. Hello there. He was bright and happy. Makes a change from insane or mild indifference. Afternoon. My home was... I lost rather a lot of my potion ingredients. The muggles I'm staying with don't know a thing. In any case, I was looking for enough ingredients for travel and battle. I was informed by my former guardians that this was a place where I would be able to be helped. That wasn't too thick. It described his situation whilst implying he didn't know everything about potions. The man all the while nodded knowingly and muttered something before walking off around his store. After about 15 minutes, he returned. Here are all the regular ingredients, the others I'm going to need. Harry dumped a handful of galleons on the counter. Yes, that will be, he said before scurrying off. Money does get you anywhere. You're getting complacent. Constant vigilance. Damn you, Moody, you're not even here. Harry didn't even notice the man had returned. Pulling open his trunk, he laid all of the ingredients down in one of the empty compartments, along with the weapons and ammo that Harry knew he already had in there. It was beginning to fill up nicely. Grabbing the change the man had left for Harry, he walked out, heading back towards Xanax. The shop seemed deserted when he walked in, however. Since Ollivander had the unfortunate ability to scare you witless, Harry made a point to stand in the corner of Xanax, just in case.
Hello? Anyone home?
Not the most original line, but yes, I thought you might be. It is finished. He held out a box, seemingly trying to keep his distance from it. Is something the matter? Harry looked worriedly at the wand in the box. It was deep red like the wood. He could feel the power waiting for him to grasp it. This wand is perhaps one of the most powerful in the hands of the right wizard, in hands of the wrong. It might kill them, or worse. Please try it. Before you do that will be 90 galleons, he said, glancing at the box. It was, after all, handcrafted with exceptionally rare items. Harry put one hand in his robes, extracting the money before stopping. The man looked at him oddly. Do you have any wand holsters? The man produced two made of a now familiar substance. Basilisk. I noticed you were a fan of it. An extra 90 galleons for the pair. I guess it would do me no good to haggle with you. The man simply smiled as Harry placed 190 galleons on the counter. He had gotten good at deciphering how many galleons he had in his pocket throughout his day's purchasing, and how to place just a little more than was needed. Taking the wand holsters, he fitted them to both wrists, noticing they had other lengths on them, presumably for ankle or waist fastening. Sliding his phoenix into the left, he looked at his new powerful wand. The man looked on some distance away. Carefully, Harry reached for it. As soon as he had it in a firm grip, he felt it, the speed of the unicorn hair, the strength stronger than he had ever felt before, bleaching into him from the centaur hair, the unnatural power, ability, and space. So much space. Eons had gone through the ash. Harry could feel it. It built up power, speed. In wisdom, he felt like he could know it all. It was all there. And then the power, the basilisk had been old when it had given its venom. It did not die, not for its venom. The collector did lose her sight in one eye, looking at the beast, but oh, so much power given freely, a story never told. This wand belonged to Harry, a powerful wizard for his generation. He had to defeat another. Then Harry realized everything had gone blurry. Taking off his glasses while leaving the hood up, he looked around. He could see better. It seems this new wand has done many things for you, he said, looking at him almost fearfully. What? Harry growled. I mean, when you grasped the wand, I saw a few many spells split away from you. They were not part of the tracking. I am not sure what they were. You did not cast them on yourself. Harry stopped to think for a moment. All he was concentrating on was the feelings, the emotions he had gone through when he first grasped this new wand. The power, the speed, the strength, the other. Sir, you are truly a master craftsman. Not 1,000 Ollivanders could equal the skill in creating this. Harry held up the wand, and the wand crafter backed away worried. Thank you. The Mane nodded contentedly, and seemingly pleased Harry had taken the wand in his hand away from him. Do not worry. Perhaps in the future the alley will return to a way it once was. With that he turned and left. He heard the wand maker whisper, Maybe one day, yes it will. Walking slowly back to the lane, he entered and walked straight to the specialty apothecary. There Harry bought several ready-made potions, including an ample supply of the quite useful Polyjuice potion, as well as several others which exploded when outside glass or cauldron for more than a few seconds, and others which Harry had in mind for battle, and some to impress the twins. After all, he needed to contribute to his business in some way other than money. Happy that he had purchased everything he had intended to, he walked back over to Lyle and Kristoff's to find them carrying the final pieces of Harry's clothing to the counter. Over the next hour, they made Harry try on everything before finally letting him put it all carefully away in his trunk along with his other boots, leaving for the moment his invisibility cloak rolled in his pocket. As he paid, an idea occurred to him. Guys, what would a whole basilisk be worth to you? He thought, thinking of a certain basilisk that was lying in a certain chamber. What you've just bought represents only a small amount of what you can get from a full-sized basilisk. They're impossible to find. Why? Kristoff asked, surprised. I was just thinking, guys with your talents should have at least an outlet in Diagon Alley, just working things through in my head. If you had the opportunity to have an even ground against Mykins, would you? Harry was thinking now. All those Black Estates and the Potter ones, I must have something on Diagon, not for now. Maybe in the future, it can't hurt to begin to build bridges. We'd love it, except the rent is extravagant in Diagon, or you risk one of the dodgy establishments. But why? Not now, but maybe at some point in the future. Just maybe I might be able to help you. I'm not sure when, but it'll be a grand opening if it does happen. Harry. They both called out as he turned to leave. He spun around, wand out. His phoenix wand out. Yes, he stared at them as he pulled up his hood. How can we get in contact with you? Kristoff must have seen a raised eyebrow. To find out how all the outfits and everything is faring in a practical sense. Kristoff smiled warmly. Don't contact me until the middle of the year. Well, after Hogwarts goes back. I may be a little late getting there. I may not go back at all. I guess it all depends, really. But send ambiguous then, and if I don't reply, I'll get back to you in the future. That I do promise. Good day, gentlemen. And thank you. Harry turned and walked confidently out of the alleys and back into the leaky cauldron. Summoning the night bus, he felt like it had been years since he had caught it, just early this morning. Where to? Marigold Court, Surrey. Paying Stan for just a seat, shaking off the offers of bed and hot chocolate. Harry stared out the window. There was still a bit of light left as the afternoon soon turned to night. The Dursleys. Am I ready to stun them? Will the wards stop me? The house is protected, Harry, by blood wards. They are bound to the house through you and your aunt as your only living relatives. They're bound through me. I should be able to stun them, but only if they give me trouble. What did the Dursleys value? Normalness. Money. Harry began to ponder as the bus made a stop still in London. An old witch got on taking a seat next to one of the rolling beds that shifted and moved as the bus sped through outer London. Do they fear Dumbles more than they want money? Harry still had quite a bit of money. Pounds money on him. A couple of thousand shouldn't torture muggles. I don't want to be the next Voldemort. Despite what the prophet likes to think, best to satisfy the piranhas with honey rather than vinegar. That's a mixed metaphor. Harry shook his head. Marigold Court. Stan yelled out, pulling Harry from his thoughts. Thank you, Stan, Harry said, pulling on his backpack and jumping off the bus. Pulling on his invisibility cloak, Harry walked back toward Privet Drive, entering through the back garden. On second thoughts, they don't know how I left, just that I did. I could say the order took me, and that they're taking me with the tomorrow. Best leave earlier than I did today. I need to be way away before Dumble's 2 weeks is up. Looking closely at the back door, he could still see no rippling of an invisibility cloak. Once he was right near the door, he pulled off his cloak and walked through the door. Only Petunia was in the kitchen. Her back to him, Petunia spun around to see Harry. She let out a little yelp. Harry smiled as sweetly as he could. Hello, Aunt. Where were you? You missed your chores. They came and got me earlier in the morning. I didn't want to wake you and Vernon. Harry answered, deliberately using his uncle's name. I'll be leaving tomorrow. They said it would be for the best. Hedwig's going to be returning to Hogwarts. Some of my stuff will stay here, as I'm going to a secure location. Others will be round in 2 weeks. They will just go up to my room and get my stuff. Petunia looked as though she was working up to say something. Annette. Harry roughly cut off her thinking. It's either that, or I stay around for the next 2 weeks, or I can leave tomorrow. I may not even be back next year. Petunia gulped. Vernon wouldn't be happy, but he'd be in a better mood if Harry left. The doctors had been saying he was getting a high blood pressure. Well, that sounds fine. Tell Vernon, would you? I'll just grab a bite to eat. I had a large lunch. In reality, he had eaten out in a quiet French restaurant in central London, where everyone called him Monsieur, but he needed something to keep him going for tomorrow. Harry made up a couple of sandwiches and grabbed a few pieces of fruit. It wasn't as though Dudley was going to eat them. As he was about to walk out, a thought occurred to him. He hadn't actually escalated his mum and dad's will, but going on experience with Dumbledore. Aunt. Petunia whipped around to stare at him. One other thing. We both know I dislike it here. Understatement of the year. And several things have come to light. I haven't seen Mum and Dad's will. Petunia's lip curled at a mention of his parents. But from what has come to light, I don't believe that this was the first choice. Dumbledore said he placed me here. Placed me here, not brought me, not somewhere I would be loved. Harry thought bitterly. Dumbledore placed me here. And I'm starting to wonder why. If you have any reason to take out your emotions when people come calling, aim them at Dumbledore. I'm sure you'll know which one he is. With that, Harry turned and left. As Harry walked up the stairs, he marveled at the fact that he'd been able to bend the truth so swiftly, and doing so meant that he didn't have to give any money to his scheming, manipulative relatives. He spent the rest of the night in his room arranging his trunk. He didn't need to worry about his firebolt, as it was still somewhere at Hogwarts, probably locked away. He took most of his advanced spell books and some of his simpler potions texts and put them into his new trunk. He left all his school robes. The Gryffindor crest made him think of the hat's warnings. House unity. Well, you can't really be united whilst divisions pull you apart. Or maybe understanding the other side is what I should be doing. Although 4 sides isn't really a toss of a coin. Very true, Harry. Harry realized he must have fallen asleep, otherwise he wouldn't be imagining Sirius sitting in a chair patting a tabby cat, which looked oddly like Professor McGonagall. How odd, Sirius, you seem to be petting a pussy. What Harry had just said didn't escape his subconscious, and he started to laugh. So why has my subconscious decided to have a talk and a laugh at this point? Harry sat himself down on his chair, looking at Sirius. No reason, you just fell asleep. That's all, but you are thinking. Where am I going to go tomorrow? Harry pondered to himself. Yes. Any ideas? Damn subconscious. That's what I'm here for. Well, a train, Harry said, thinking of open spaces. A train? Not to London? Or the express? No, north to Edinburgh, a bit of fun, then maybe some open spaces. But as a wizard or a muggle, Harry thought about that. As a wizard, he was the boy who lived. As a muggle, at least around Privet Drive, he was that kid who goes to a school for the criminally insane. As Harry Potter, maybe someone else. Harry Evans, maybe just as Harry. Yes, the cat jumped off Sirius and disappeared into the mist. What was that? He asked. But Sirius had disappeared, also. Harry was on his bed, looking at his photo album. The corners a little creased, but still in good condition. There were other photos at the back added. Photos of Sirius and his parents. It went into his journeyman's trunk. The only things he would be leaving at the Dursleys was his old trunk, battered and broken from its rough handling in and out of the Dursleys' car boot, some empty ink pots, a broken quill, and his homework assignment he had finished before starting his packing, putting the finishing touches on it. He thought of the cat, a reminder of Hogwarts and everything else. Then he turned to his oldest companion, his first friend. This was something he wasn't looking forward to. Hedwig! She turned and flew out of her cage onto the window, still staring at him. Hedwig, I'm going out tomorrow, probably for the rest of the summer. She hooted softly at him, as to say, not to battle? No, not to get myself into deliberate danger, but to explore, to find stuff, relax. I don't want to be tracked or get post. I just want to have some fun and get away, and prepare. I know you can understand me, so that's why I'm telling you. She nodded, but continued to stare. Where should I go? I'm not staying here. Harry chuckled. He knew that look. I'm not going to ask you to stay here. I would say go to the Burrow, but even there, I don't know. How about you go to Hogwarts, or the Shrieking Shack? That's away from Hogwarts. Hunt, find the others, not the school owls, others. I don't know. Just be happy and explore. Like I'm going to do. Harry stroked her, and she flew forward and landed on his shoulder, rubbing him with her wing. I'll see when school starts. Maybe a little later. It depends. Don't take any letters for anyone while I'm gone. Okay? Hedwig hooted, nipped his ear playfully before launching herself into the air. Harry let out a sigh, seeing her fly off, but he wanted to get away from the wizarding world for a bit. He was still a wizard, he just didn't want to be contacted, and everyone knew Hedwig was as loyal as they come. With everything packed, Harry thought about a quick Scourgify spell, but thought against it. No need to alert his watchers, he could do magic. Checking over his backpack, everything was packed and balanced, as Dave had shown him. All his muggle camping and backpacking stuff in there. His trunk in his pocket, his coat lying over it with his invisibility cloak also laying in wait. All his wizarding money he transferred to the trunk, with various bits of muggle in the trunk, backpack and pockets. Harry laid down, setting his watch for an early morning start. He didn't want to spend any longer than he had to at Privet Drive. Harry rose very quickly, fumbling his watch alarm off, and for a moment meandered around like an animal in the headlights before remembering everything from the day before. Putting on all of his stuff and checking out the window, he could see Mundungus smoking something outside, only barely covered by an invisibility cloak. Grabbing an apple as he walked silently through the kitchen, he tugged on the straps of Has' backpack. Looking around, he made a silent departure out the back garden and down the landway, pulling the cloak off as he did so. It was a few-kilometer walk to the tube, but the air was refreshing, and the coat kept him at a nice, neutral, cool temperature. As he walked, he thought back on the previous day's events. He grabbed a wand, the power. Casting aside the feelings for a moment, he felt spells lying deep in his body evaporate. They weren't the residuals of the killing curse. They weren't even from Voldemort. Harry felt himself watching the spell's disintegration again and again. It was a purple spell. There was something oddly familiar about it, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Without the incantation or spell name, it's just a spell, and not even the dying residuals of a spell. I can't even remember having been placed on me. Erg. Harry looked around for a moment, unsure of where he was. He only knew that there was a tube station near the Dursleys. He knew it was in the town, but Harry started to look around before looking straight in front of him. In large friendly letters, London Underground, were emblazoned. Before long, he had his ticket and was riding towards the center of London for the second time in 2 days. Though going on the tube proved to be an all the more comfortable experience than the haphazard, dangerous wizarding manner that the night bus took. Harry got off on the Central Line and quickly made his way to a ticket booth selling tickets for Edinburgh. His ticket bought, Harry looked at the time. He had a little over 4 hours to kill. Putting the ticket in one of his secure pockets, he walked happily out into London for a large breakfast, his grabbed apple just an empty memory. On his way back to the train station, Harry stopped into a bookshop, buying an odd range of books from the fictional to some he had picked up thinking they were magic books. The Book of War, the Book of Lies, Genetic Politics, Beyond the Third Zone, all of which seemed to talk about blood rites and rituals among other things. He stowed them in his backpack as he settled down to read an Agatha Christie he had picked up. Much later, he was on the train, letting his thoughts and his consciousness drift. He fell into a gentle sleep from the train's gentle motion. 8 days later, Harry was walking back to the youth hostel after another night of partying. He had been drinking a large amount tonight, something he knew he would probably regret the next morning. Fingering the ID that he frequently used, he thought of his transfiguration mistress. He could almost hear her scowling at what he was using his transfig skill learnt in her class for. It had been 8 days ago since he had arrived in Edinburgh, discovering the many different scenes that were present in the city, which felt so different and removed from London. But now, as he crashed onto the bed, not waking the other occupants, he felt like he wanted to get moving, exploring, just journeying. At that point, the booze got the better of him, and he passed out. There was the dull thump of the beat, which made it all the more odd to see 2 armchairs and a fireplace. Dreaming again! Harry mused, taking his seat with his subconscious. Passed out, and you know it. Well, I'm a bit ready to move on. The crowd and the scene disappeared, leaving the void a bit more foggy around the edges. Harry started to talk again. It's Dumbledore and others, keeping me locked up with the Muggles, or in Grimmauld Place, or even in Hogwarts. Here, I'm having fun, but it's not nuts. I want to spend some time outside, maybe in some hamlets. I won't ask you what you think. People have already commented. I talk to myself too much. A sign of madness, they say. I'm sure one night I said I was a wizard. You did. They were drunker than you. Dumbledore, or someone from the Order, will be at the Dursleys to get me. I think I should leave here before then, get lost in the countryside. But you're wondering why Dumbledore hasn't noticed the charms that aren't on me or that they've left the country and all that. And Sirius, his subconscious queried, I really shouldn't be talking to myself. You're not. But Harry cut himself off, and the instruments in the Git's office were monitoring things, so he hasn't been into his office, and the only one who does is Phineas and the other portraits. I guess he'd have noticed, maybe told Dumbles, but he's also a black, so who knows? Harry glanced at Sirius, who shrugged. You're gonna have a headache in the morning. I know. At least it was a brilliant last night. The booze, the people, the girls. Harry groaned and looked around at the room. No one else was up. He had taken to getting up rather early, despite his heavy drinking antics, the night before. Harry collected his towel and bag and walked off for a hot shower. Then promptly threw up in the toilet. Then he had a hot shower. Packing his bag and handing back the key card, Harry pulled out the map of Greater Scotland and walked off for the train station. He wasn't aiming for anywhere in particular, just into the country enough to walk and loose himself. The train pulled away from the station. Harry was leaning up against the window, reading Genetic Politics Beyond the Third Zone by Gustus Orthripsted. Must have been a wizard with a wacky name like that. Harry thought to himself, flipping to the page he was last at. Meanwhile, whilst Harry was relaxing on a train edging its way northwest, shit of many kinds was going to hit the fan when Dumbledore returned to his office, having not been in there since school had finished. Dumbledore had spent the last 10 days organizing things at Grimmauld Place, coaxing with very little encouragement to Snape into yet again delving and breaking down barriers in young Harry's mind. Snape almost relished it. Harry would cope it was for the greater good after all, and anything extra learnt was all the better. Even after last year, he still wanted to tell me everything. Albus muttered to himself as he walked the long corridors of Hogwarts. He felt more at home here than anywhere, more so after spending 11 days at the House of Black residents. He had spent more than one order meeting convincing them that it was time for Harry to join. Molly Weasley had put up the various protests, but he agreed to induct Hermione and Ronald as advisors, which did nothing to satiate Molly, but Arthur seemed to calm his wife from a total hysterical berating. Nodding to the gargoyle, he climbed the stairs as he walked in the door. Albus knew something was wrong. Looking at the various pieces of equipment that Harry had smashed in their last meeting, all repaired, he then looked at his desk, where a map should have been showing the location of the tracking trams that were deeply embedded in Harry and his wand. Albus almost swore. Rushing over to the fireplace, he threw some flue powder in. Number 12, Grimmauld Place. It was Remus who answered. Albus, you look terrible, Remus said, trying to lighten the dark look on Albus's face. All the tracking charms have gone haywire. All the tracking charms on Harry have gone haywire. Albus corrected himself before taking a breath. Remus, get together, whoever is at headquarters, and Flo, here we need to start a search. Remus nodded and disappeared. Albus went and sat in his chair savoring a lemon drop while he stared at the various tracking charms. According to them, Harry was somehow in France, America, and Brighton, and also what worried Albus most, possibly in great pain. A portion of the charm registered as being splattered through a large area. Didn't anyone notice? I should have been here, Albus muttered to himself as he took another lemon drop. Someone was chuckling behind him. Albus whipped around. Any quicker would have given himself whiplash. What is it, Phineas? Albus grumbled at the painting. He's a member of my family now, Dumbledore. Harry? Albus stared up at the painting. Oh yes, but I think I'll let him do the talking, that is. Phineas looked down at Dumbledore. If you locate him before Dumbledore could question, he had wandered off. At that point, Minerva and the rest of the Order arrived in his office. Slowly rising, he addressed the few members of the Order that were present. I have just found out that Harry may have disappeared. Before outcry could happen, Albus continued. The tracking charms seem to be pointing to 4 different points. We shall have to go to each of these and find Harry. Death Eaters may have taken him. Albus picked up 3 crystal balls off his desk. Molly, Arthur, Kingsley, take this. It is a portkey. It also acts as a tracker. It will track the charms on Harry. Please, everyone, as you track Harry, do not tell anyone that it is Harry you are tracking. Molly and Arthur Weasley and Kingsley all touched the ball, and they disappeared, all the while Molly wailing about Harry. The poor boy. Tonks, Remus, Hestia. This should take you to the location of the tracking charms. Remus seemed to gain gray hairs just taking the orb. Hagrid, could you and Amos take this one? Severus, Mad-Eye, we shall be going to the 4th location. Albus pulled out a 4th ball, and they disappeared in a swirl of light, and reappeared in what appeared to be a smelting mill. Looking at the orb, it seemed to be trying to point in 3 different directions. Tutting Albus returned it to the interior of his robes, and pulled out 3 slightly smaller orbs, handing 1 each to Mad-Eye and Severus. It seems the charms are spread out. Search for what you can and return here to this spot. Albus walked off, leaving Mad-Eye and Severus staring at the orbs. Severus followed the directions to a large pool of bubbling metal. He idly wondered if Potter had fallen in. He felt warm and bubbly inside at the thought of Potter being melted down to slag. Albus wasn't having much luck either. He traced some of the charms to a shard of metal, which he was now holding, and walking back to the rendezvous, he saw Severus standing there, trying to ignore the oddly grinning Mad-Eye. As Albus approached, he held up a handle to a cup. Albus looked down at the shard he was holding and frowned. Moody, is there something humorous about the situation? Albus asked grumpily as he pulled out the portkey. Oh, I think so, Albus, but let us wait until we're out of here, Moody said, chuckling to himself. Severus, did you find anything of note? Anything that had tracking charms on it is over there, in the boiling slag. Maybe even Potter himself, if we're lucky. Albus frowned and held out the portkey. They reappeared in the office, only needing to wait for half an hour for the rest of the teams to return. Albus placed their pieces on a table in the middle of the room. Remus, Tonks, and Hestia returned next, Hestia frowning at the quarter of the cup in her hand. Yeshia, Tonks, Remus, what did you find? Albus said, placing the cup on the table as he checked over the charms. They were all there. Even the old deep ones, he frowned, exactly the same as they had been in Harry. It was at a summer house in Brighton. It smelt like the Dursleys had visited at some point in the past. There are a lot of tracking charms on that Albus, Ramatif slowly, eyeing the aged wizard as he did so. Mad-Eye chuckled behind them as he winked at Phineas, nodded back at the group, and leaned back in his chair as though watching an amusing play perform before him. At that moment, both Molly and Arthur's group and Hagrid and Amos arrived back, and both tried to speak at once. Eventually, Molly won out. And we arrived at the Salem Academy. We got a Beauxbaton, Hagrid put in, earning him a glare from Molly. We went in, said we were tracking something. Not poor Harry, he wasn't anywhere. They said this arrived by Hawk about 8 days ago. Their charms professor has been going over it. It has some of the most binding and advanced charms he had ever seen, some of them going back to the founders of Hogwarts, he claimed. Molly finished by handing Albus her piece of the cup. They asked us if it was all right to copy the spells as the letter said they didn't need it any longer, Molly commented. Did they have the letter? Noah. Hagrid, what of your trip? Just same as Molly's, we arrived at Beauxbatons, and it was their charms mistress who was working over the cup. They had copied and siphoned off each of the charms worn to separate objects. Looked right interesting, but they let us take the cup. They said they'd send the letter on if they found it. Hagrid pulled out the piece of the cup and handed it to Dumbledore, who took it frowning all the time and put the final piece down on the table. Now you've got 3/4 of a cup? Moody laughed from the back of the room. Albus and much of the Order turned to look at Moody as though he were mad. Remus looked mildly amused. He's a devious sort, Mad-Eye commented. Harry? Molly said, looking up. Know him. Moody motioned at Dumbledore. Those tracking charms are old and powerful. Some of them would have been in place a long time. Some are borderline legal. Some are never cast because one wrong move could have the direst consequences. Coquette's miscast by even a fraction, Moody said as he walked around the table. So was it necessary to put that many charms on the cup? Moody said again, looking at Dumbledore. They weren't on the cup, they were on Harry. Dumbledore replied angrily before he realized what he'd confirmed. He needed to be watched and kept an eye on, Dumbledore said as he picked up the cup, calmly thinking about throwing it at the grinning Exorer. More than one of those charms was tied to his wand. One is the ministry charm for underage wizards. The other binds one's magic to the wand. That is never a good thing to be tied down like that. Moody continued. Evidently he didn't get tied down, Remus said, still smirking. No, perhaps we should go to Privet Drive. Just myself, I think, Dumbledore murmured. I'm coming too. He's my best friend's godson. Moody's coming as well. Remus stood forward, staring at Dumbledore. Albus looked back and thought he saw the wolf behind Remus's eyes. Taking out a piece of rope, he offered it to the two a moment later. They disappeared in a flash of light and magic. Harry, whilst all that had been going on, was slowly reading through his book, sipping on a cup of hot sweet tea, watching the city rush past, and was slowly turning to countryside.
Another station of 2 and it's time to stop sitting around,
Harry said to himself. The carriage was mostly empty. Just a kid listening to some music and a businessman typing on a laptop. Neither were magical as far as Harry could tell. Remus, Moody, and Dumbledore appeared in a swirl of color at the doorstep of Privet Drive, startling Mundungus from his sleep. Dung? Remus exclaimed. You didn't know he was being watched? Moody queried. No, he told me we should give him space, that we shouldn't encroach on him, no matter how unobtrusive. Remus was glaring at Dumbledore all the while. Thank you, Mundungus. You may return to Grimmauld Place. Dung muttered a thanks and disappeared with a loud crack of disapparition. I was simply keeping an eye on the boy, nothing more. Dumbledore muttered dismissively as Moody pulled his wand. Dumbledore held a hand up to stop him. Manners, and proceeded to knock on the door. It was opened by Petunia Dursley. Petunia, how are you? If we may see Harry. Albus walked him past the shocked Petunia. Remus smiled, as did Moody, and shut the door. The four of them continued upstairs. When they reached Harry's door, they pushed it open to find the room empty. As I was trying to tell you before you rudely pushed your way up here, he left. He said you would be round to pick up his stuff. Remotus and Moody swept into his room, shrinking everything that Harry had left. It wasn't much, and then walked back down the stairs, following Albus, who walked into the living room. Petunia, what did Harry say exactly? He said that your people were taking him to a secure location, that it was either that or he stayed for the rest of the summer. Albus nodded all the time and turned to leave. Dumbledore. Petunia almost choked as she spoke the aged wizard's name. Yes, Petunia. Remus and Moody swung around to stare at the woman. He did say that he hadn't seen his parents' will. Remus looked incredulous at Dumbledore. Albus merely looked sad. He also said, Dumbledore placed me here, and I'm beginning to wonder why. I don't remember much of Lily, but I know that she and him would have wanted one of your kind to bring him up. So why here, scaring my little Dudley all his life? Why? She walked over calmly to walk out the door and slapped Albus before walking out into the kitchen. Albus was beyond shocked. Shall we return to Hogwarts? He pulled out the portkey. Moody and Remus were looking at each other in the same way. So, he's gone, Albus? Yes. Tonks. Where? Why? How? Molly said from the back of the room. It was just Molly. Arthur, Tonks, Remus, Severus, and Moody left now. The others had returned to work and the like. I don't know, Molly, I just don't know. He received my letter, so he knew we were coming. What letter? Molly and Remus said together. They each looked at each other before at Dumbledore. Just detailing when we were coming and that he should stay in the house for his own good, nothing more. Snape, has Voldemort had any news over the past week? Any captures of people like Harry? Moody queried from the back of the office. No, Snape sneered. Nothing. He's not done any raids or anything since Potter's insane venture into the Department of Mysteries. In that case, there's nothing to worry about. Moody shrugged. What do you mean, Moody? Nothing to worry about. Harry's out there in who knows what condition. Molly, I agree with Moody, Remus said kindly, looking between her and Dumbledore. Albus, you can't agree with them. Molly waved her hand at the two men. No, we should find Harry for his own good. He needs protection. The prophecy. Albus started to pace. Why? Why, what Moody? Dumbledore said, looking up with a twinkling at Moody. Why does Harry need finding? He obviously got away from the guards you put on his house. If Dung and Tonks can be called guards. Hey, I resent the implication. Tonks glared at Moody. We shall need to locate him as quickly and as soon as possible. Bring him back to the security of the order. Albus was growing more, not angry with the others, but he was getting agitated. I don't think so. Fulnius seems to think whatever he's doing, it's for the best. He just lost Black. Damn Dumbledore. Have some compassion. Moody growled. Harry will be fine. He's the youngest person to produce a Patronus. He's fought Voldemort or one of his lackeys every year since he's come here, and you don't think he's going to survive the summer on his own. He's got more of James, Lily, and even Sirius in him than you give him credit for. I'm not saying I wouldn't have tried to stop him had he been able to approach me. Lupin paused. But obviously he wanted to get away from you. Otherwise he wouldn't have taken off after reading your letter, and he didn't just disappear or run off. He took most of his school books, so he's not skiving off. Lupin walked off towards the door, joining Moody. We won't be joining your search. I think you will, the war. Albus started. He leaned back on his desk.
Albus.
Harry's seen more than most Aurors, seen things that would make a lot of recruits sick, and he's still come out fighting. You're trying to get a 16 going on 17-year-old involved in a war that he's only in because he lived if he can't have a life. Tonks, who had started Soddet, was slowly raising her voice. What's the point in fighting? Remus said quietly from the door. We'll take our leave, Remus, Tonks. Moody gestured and walked out the door. Remus followed, not looking back. Tonks walked to the door and then looked back sadly at Dumbledore. She shook her head and followed the others. If Potter wants to go off and get himself killed, I for one won't stand in the way. Severus looked between the remaining few and walked out. Albus, you are going to search for him? Molly asked, her voice already loud and rising accusingly. As soon as I have some firm information, either from Severus or my own sources. Yes, but for now we do not have the resources to search aimlessly. Get Ronald to speak to Hermione about Harry. See if they can shed any light. Until the next order meeting. Then we'll formulate a plan. Molly looked to Arthur before noticing Dumbledore was holding out a pot of flu powder. Evidently, it was time to go. Once they had left, Albus sat down and wrote a short note to Harry, demanding he return to the safety of Grimmauld Place and the Order, or to know where he was, and then look to Fawkes. Offering it to Fawkes, he looked at it, and then at Dumbledore, and then seemed to shake his head and flew back to his perch, softly trilling. Albus sighed and had another lemon drop. Harry had been at his current campsite for the past 5 days. After leaving the train station, he'd picked up a few essentials, oats, and some fruit, and the like for a good week's worth. He'd walking some distance before deliberately loosing himself in a forest before finding the river. He could catch fish with a line and transfigured rod, and he hadn't done that badly in herbology that he couldn't find plants to supplement his diet. After day 2, when he'd woken up refreshed from the cool air and cold morning, he'd come up with a routine. Have a fruit or vegetable breakfast. Whatever he could find, he usually supplemented it with malts or something from his shrunken trunk. He'd go do some reading of Salazar's book or others, learning up spells, curses, or protection. It wasn't like being at Hogwarts or with his mates. There were too many barriers, even in the outdoors of Hogwarts. Here, he mused, there was nothing for quiet, some distance in every direction, just the rushing water. He went exploring around lunch, walking some distance before finding his way back to camp. Another day or two here, and then off again, I think, Harry said to himself. He had long given up pretending he didn't talk to himself. If it was a sign of madness, at least, it wasn't the extreme I want to kill everyone kind. This sort of madness was mild by comparison. Walking down to the river in the ever-encroaching dusk, he knelt down to wash his face and hair. He'd only been game enough to get in 2 days ago, and then he had sat by the fire with warming chards on himself despite it being summer. Harry saw something slithering up towards him, With a flick of his wrist, he had his basilisk wand in his hand. The thing slithered onto the shore. "Hello," Harry said softly to the water snake. The snake seemed taken aback by his greeting. "Hello, it is unusual to hear one who speaks to us." "Yes, I suppose it is." Harry looked upstream, thinking back to something he had read. Maybe it was in Hagrid's classes. "You are heading upstream to mate or look on you children." Harry smiled softly as he drew in some water into his pot. "Yes, you are a wise one, but I must depart, night approaches." "Yes, it does. A good life to you." Harry tipped his head to the snake. "Thank you, and to you, young one." With that, it continued upstream, pulling on his jacket and clearing up what was left of his campsite. Harry walked back up through the forest. He had decided, after seeing the snake last night, that he would depart a day earlier. He wasn't much to believe in divination, certainly not the way Trelawney taught it, but it was a sign. Probably. Harry spent much of the day walking along dirt roads or old paths. Not seeing a soul, he didn't mind. He felt cleansed by the experience. Not being around people who would constantly ask, "How are you, Harry?" or "I'm sorry about," even Mrs. Weasley's mothering. He had once found it endearing, loving, but he did find it a little stifling at times, and now he wasn't sure he needed to be coddled as just a boy. It was about 2:80 p.m. when Harry came up to a large old house and warehouse of some description. It was by the river. It looked to be a distillery for whiskey, his ID valid still, and Harry idly wondered if they could use a set of hands for a week or so. He'd like to find out more about Scottish whiskey and, of course, try some along the way. Walking off the road and down the driveway, Harry could see one or two people working. His eyesight had been steadily improving since that day in Xanax now that he did not require his glasses anymore. Approaching the man and woman, he decided honesty. Well, a version of it was going to be best. "Hi, I saw you from the road. I'm a backpacker, eh?" The man said, smiling. His wife also smiled kindly. "I would have gone for journeyman, traveler, explorer," Harry joked. "But anyway, I was wondering if you needed a hand or any help." They seemed to hesitate. "I'm not looking for money or anything, just looking to help and learn. I can sleep outside, I don't mind." A look of relief spread across their faces. "We'd love some help. We can even put you up. We've got plenty of rooms." "I'm Will Loft." He put out his hand. Harry Potter." "Sophie, nice to meet you. We were just going inside. Why don't you come in and tell us why you're a journeyman?" That could be a long and surprising story. Harry thought as he followed them inside. On the way in, they went past a library. Something caught his eye. "Will, is this your library?" "My uncle's. He was in the army." "Why?" "Just something caught my eye." "It's probably those magic books I was reading the other night," Sophie said as she led them into the kitchen. "Magic books?" Harry said carefully, ready to let loose his wand. "Yeah, me and Soph were looking through the library a month or two ago. Found some old books, weird authors, someone named Helga Hufflepuff. Another one wasn't even in English, could just make out the author. What was it?" Will was saying as he walked over to the kettle. "Sounded like a snake. Slytherin, that's it," Sophie said as she pulled out 3 cups, handing them to Will. "Right. Calm. Coincidences like this happen all the time." They were pretty hard to read. There were some others there. All his old army books and journals and things, old literature books, plus some ones that were called Standard Book of Potions something. Or was it spells? Sophie sat down with the pot, Will joining her. They were really detailed too, not the sort of thing that would be a kid's book, almost like they were written for he let out a chuckle, wizard. They both had a laugh at that one, a hearty, good-natured laugh. Harry decided not to stun them and run. Putting down his backpack, he joined them at the table, sipping hot, sweet tea. It helped to calm Harry's nerves. "So, Harry, how do you come to be wandering around here?" Sophie leaned into her tea, as though she was trying to read her tea leaves through a full cup. "I had a hard year. Realized that I needed to get away from people crowding me, asking me how I was doing. The fresh air, the open spaces seemed a good idea. Just loosing myself, finding where it lead. I've been camping for the last week. It's been refreshing. Last night I decided to get going. I found myself here." Harry was telling more truth than anything else. None of it was a lie. "So, is it just the two of you here?" Harry gestured. "Yes, my uncle. He left to go and live closer to the city, so he could meet his friends and the like. We needed a change, sort of like you. This gave us the opportunity. I'm a school teacher. I teach in the local school for a lot of the kids around here. But my uncle made whiskey just like his father did, and so on, so we agreed to take on the business. It only takes 2. It's a small operation. We only supply to the pubs around here. They have a few bottles, so they can sell it on." "That sounds good." "So, Harry," Sophie started, "what was it you wanted to learn?" Well, about whiskey, actually, about all the different kinds, and I want to help out. Also, that sounds fine. We could use an extra hand. I don't mind teaching you some of the tastes and stuff. I'm no expert, but you can work it out, I'm sure. We're both enjoyers of the amber fluid. Also, Sophie had finished her tea and was looking into the remains. I was wondering if it would be okay to look through your library at some point. Sounds good. Will jumped up. I've just got to lock up the distillery, Soph. Why don't you find Harry a room, then we can get started on dinner. I can help if you'd like. I'm a dab hand at cooking. Harry piped up. He didn't want to appear to be trying to get a free ride. That's all right, Harry. Come on, I think there are some rooms that haven't accumulated a lifetime worth of dust, Sophie said as she led him up the stairs. Everything was old, but nice. No magic anywhere as far as Harry could tell. Our rooms are down the end there. We can put you in. She randomly grabbed a handle and opened it. It had white sheets on everything, and once they pulled those off, it was relatively clean. Even the ensuite had minimal dust. This is brilliant. I've been sleeping on the earth for the past few days. This is brilliant. I didn't mind the tent, but you know, Harry grinned at her as he put down his back. I'll let you get settled. Will and I will be down in the kitchen. I'll be down in a moment. I'd like to help. How do you fancy a few plump fish? Fish? Where from? The river's teeming with them. I've been fishing upstream for the past week. Just let me find my reel and rod and I'll be right down. She smiled and walked out. Transfiguring one of the sheets into a rod, he grabbed his reel and went downstairs. Greeting Will and Sophie like old friends, he said he'd be about 30 minutes. We've got plenty of meat in the freezer if you want, Will said. If I don't catch anything in 45 minutes, then all right. But I guarantee 4 large fish, beautiful with some of those herbs. He gestured and made his way for the door. Not 15 minutes later, Harry walked back in 5 large fish on a stick. Whoa, that's a big catch, Harry. The last time I tried to catch anything, there I got nothing. Will stared. Harry just shrugged. Harry had been at the Lofts distillery for a good 5 days. Will had told Harry at breakfast that morning that he and Sophie were going into town. They asked if Harry wanted to come. He'd told that thanks but no. He wanted to go exploring, go for a long walk. In reality, after exploring the Lofts library and the old army books, they had made him decide it was time to start practicing the weapons he'd got from Dave. He still had only managed to look at some of the magic books that were on the shelf. Most of them were relatively old, although Helga Hufflepuff's journal was the oldest. So later that morning found Harry deep in a forest with a handgun in his hand. He had taken the clip out and was learning or trying to every part of it, occasionally going back to the book and various handwritten bits of paper Dave must have put in one of the boxes. Harry slowly slid the clip into the gun. He felt odd. This wasn't like holding a wand. A wand could be used for lots of things, not just killing. This was an object that sole purpose was to kill. Can I do it? He said out loud, looking around at the forest. Kill someone? His subconscious making one of its conscious appearances. His occlumency practice each night seemed to make it more audible. He could easily ignore it like he did before. But it was. Harry reasoned slightly better than talking and no one answering. This is made for killing. You are using it to protect. This is. And this has been a war. A war I never wanted to be involved in. A war I was kept out of. A war that I now have to fight without the preparation because of him. Harry thought, feeling the weight of the gun in his hand.
Dumbledore or Voldemort?
I think it's both. Harry turned and aimed at a tree and squeezed the trigger. The gun went click and didn't fire. Harry looked at the gun and then to the bit of paper being weighed down by a box of ammo. The instructions said, take safety off to fire, near thumb. Harry felt for it. It was easy enough to flick off with his thumb. He took aim and fired at the tree. The gun fired. It wasn't as loud as Harry thought it would be. He'd heard people apparate louder than that. Flicking the safety on, he walked a door to the tree and looked at how far the bullet had gone in.
That's a lot of power.
Harry spent the next couple of hours getting used to all the weapons in his small armory. The handguns could fit snugly in the holsters under his coat. The same with the Uzis. The Uzis Harry thought wouldn't be good in a crowd. For him to use them, he held it with one hand. His arms were quite strong from his seeker's duties, but the Uzi still managed a bit of a kick back as it spewed out bullets. The shotguns were what Harry expected, and from what he had read of the advanced potions, Dark Tomes, and Slytherin's own book, he had found many potions that had been lost or weren't used because of the delivery, which were contact potions that worked much like spells. It seemed after Harry had spent some time going through an apothecary's book that apothecaries weren't always wizards. They dealt with wizards, but they themselves were merely specialists, or sort of theologists of their day, that knew how to use the various magical substances. A lot of spells had been created by picking apart how a potion worked. and with that knowledge and the information in the book, Harry theorized he could create some powder, like potions, that could be inside the shotgun cartridges and fired at Death Eaters or other threats, either to stun, incapacitate, or kill. I'm talking about killing as though it was just an everyday thing, Harry said to himself as he repacked everything back into his trunk, digging around for the apothecary's book so he could search for some fresh ingredients. But isn't it a normal thing? There are murders and death all the time. In the Muggle world, you can't turn on the TV and not see something, open the newspaper, so what's different? Nothing, except it is expected of you to fight this war. If I had known about it, I would have known. Prepared. I've seen death, every year except when I met Sirius and then Pettigrew. He should have died. Harry let out a growl, thinking of Pettigrew. He drew in a deep breath of the cool air and shut and shrunk the trunk, looking at the piece of parchment with page numbers, pulling his backpack onto his back. It was much lighter with a lot of his things back at the Loft's house. He began to basically walk around searching for the different plants. Some he had dried in his trunk, some, however, worked better, fresh in many instances. He cast a few searching charms. With his basilisk wand, he had become more confident with it after practicing at controlling the power, so he didn't create an uncontrollable jet of fire when he cast a simple incendio. After at least 4 hours, he had a backpack full of various herbs, magical plants, roots, and samples of bushes and leaves. Walking back to a fallen tree he saw near the river, he sat with his trunk open, slowly organizing all his ingredients. Harry felt good. He felt happy being out in the fresh air. There weren't any boundaries, no forbidden places, just the unknown, the fresh air, the river. There was no Dumbledore around to keep him locked as he had done so with Sirius. All this freedom didn't make Harry complacent. He still knew to watch out, not to wander further than he was able. He could watch out for himself, and being able to use magic helped considerably. It had been a day or two ago he had been helping Will in the distillery out the back where all the barrels fermented the whiskey. It had smelt wonderful when one of the barrels they had been moving and fell from the top. Harry didn't even think he had whipped out his wand, and a quick silent Wingardium Leviosa had set the barrel back solidly where they had been moving it. Will had asked him if he'd seen it. Harry had given a non-committal shrug. Will had muttered something about ghosts. There had been other small things like that Harry had used magic for. Nothing in a big way. Nothing that would involve them finding out. But Harry had pondered it. They did spend quite a few nights reading the magic books. Sophie seemed very interested in a divination text, an old one. Harry had finished his sorting without even thinking about it. He was left with a large bunch of rosemary. Shrinking his trunk, he tied the bunch with some grass and walked back into the forest. It would be another hour or two before he of the Lofts would be back. He spent the latter half of the afternoon practicing from his books. He had got in Nocturne before the wind whipped up, and he decided, while there was still light, he would head back. The wind was starting to get really fierce. It had been after dinner that night. They were in the kitchen after finishing clearing up when the power went out. The three of them laughed, stumbled around, trying to find a torch or candle. After many oofs and giggling, Harry got up and muttered a lumos before he realized where he was and whom he was with. "Whoops," Harry said as he stared at the two Lofts who had turned from the cupboard and were staring at him doe-eyed. Harry, Sophie was pointing at his wand. Harry, Will was pointing as well.
Why don't we go to the library and I can explain?
Harry walked to the door, waiting for the pair to follow. Will said, looking at Sophie. Sophie walked forward, grasping Will's hand, and nodded. Come on. Harry walked off towards the library, making sure the pair were following. Okay, buggered that, didn't I? Wouldn't say so. They're not the witch-burning types. They liked Helga's book. Didn't someone at some point say something about not telling Muggles about our world? Very probably, but there was a time when there was no separation, and you already know what you're going to do. Instead of what's been done, build some bridges instead of burning them. Harry felt his subconscious nod in response. As he walked into the library, he went over to the fire, put a few logs in and muttered an incendio which cut out his lumos for a second before bathing the library in a golden fiery light. Will walked straight in and sat down in front of the fire with Sophie. Harry sat down and looked at the decanter. I think we'll need to enjoy a drink for this. Pouring out 3 large drinks. So, Harry leaned into his chair. So, Will said before staring into the fire. He didn't look angry. You're a wizard, aren't you? Sophie said, getting a smile from Will. They both took a sip from their glasses. Harry smiled gently and also took a sip, the warm liquid warming him as much as their smiles. The books, I suppose, Harry asked lightly. Among other things, those few times you gave us a hand or saved us, Will said, looking from Sophie to Harry. You're not going to burn me at the stake or something, are you? Harry joked. No, of course not. It's just another bit of humanity, isn't it? Will smiled before continuing. Anyways, I've always known that Sophie was special, not a witch special though. Harry raised an eyebrow. Sometimes I see things in the tea leaves. That book on divination confirmed some things. I don't always get it right. But sometimes, when you arrived, that morning I saw a trunk, like they used to use on old ships and stuff. A journeyman. Harry decided not to pull his trunk out at that moment. There was still some tension in the air. So Harry, where are you from? Tell us your story. Beside the books, we don't know anything about witches and wizards. Me and Will'd love to know more. Sophie leaned forward eagerly. Will was grinning manically. Really? Harry smiled sadly. Of course, I'm always fascinated with the books. There's quite a collection here. The potions are fascinating. Will was swirling the amber fluid in his glass. Okay, but please let me tell the whole story. I think it would benefit me as much as you. So Harry told the whole story, who Helga Hufflepuff was, who Slytherin was, not the bad bits. He had begun to change his opinion of the man who may not even be the founder. He told them of Hogwarts. He told them of his life with the Dursleys. This he didn't sugarcoat. They patted him on the back, Sophie even hugging him. He told of his first year, his friends, the fun, the flying, and eventually the Philosopher's Stone. He continued, the Chamber of Secrets, Malfoy, and onwards to third year, and meeting his godfather, onwards through fourth in the Tri-Wizard Tournament, the horrific end. He had tears in his eyes remembering Cedric. He told them of Voldemort and the Death Eaters, of his parents' deaths. He told them of Umbridge and the Department of Mysteries. He explained to them about Dumbledore and his part in his life, the manipulations, the plots, everything up to the present day, even about the weapons and preparing himself for war, and about the cleansing effects of his backpacking, how he'd enjoyed his time with them. By the end, he felt purged. Having told another person or two, he felt like he didn't have to hold it all in. He didn't need to cry, but he felt like a river had washed out of him. Will was looking sad and angry. Sophie was crying. There's nothing we can say to... No, it feels good to have told someone all of it. Harry realized he had drunk all of his glass and poured out another smaller dram for all three of them. So, this Voldemort, he wants what? Was said, looking up at the bookshelf. The usual things. Power, dominance. He enjoys torture. All the things I told you. He's no fan of many wizarding folk, but he has his followers. The people who have fought him, many have died, or been tortured into insanity.
I understand that. Well, I don't, but there have been plenty of other mad despots in the world. But why you? You mentioned this, Dumbledore. Not preparing you, but why you? Sophie was swirling the liquid clockwise in her glass.
Have you both read or flipped through the book on divination? Sophie, I saw you reading it. Which one? Was said, looking over the bookshelf. Just on your right, Will, Sophie said, looking up as Will came and sat back down with them. Oh yes, I remember you reading through it about the tea leaves. I think I flipped through it. Not really as interesting as the Slytherin book. Harry had to smile at Will's comments. He had had similar thoughts with regard to Trelawney. What do you know of prophecy? Harry leaned back, thinking of the one he was told. When they're made in the wizarding world, they're portents, a sign of things to come. Generally set in stone. When they begin, not the sort of thing you want to have put on you. Sophie was staring at Harry. There's a prophecy about you. Harry nodded and proceeded to tell them in explaining that Dumbledore had known from when he had put him with his relatives. They looked a little sick at hearing this. I haven't told anyone this. Only Dumbledore and I know. I trust you too. Thank you for listening. Harry cast a Lumos on his wand and started to wander around the library trying to find the candles. Lighting them, he handed one each to Will and Sophie before sitting back down. I'd understand if you want me to leave. I can be gone before morning. This got them out of staring at the fire. There were many protests that he couldn't go, that they weren't going to chuck him out, and Will's slightly more ominous comment. There are a few things I'd like to show you in the morning. I guess we should head to bed as the power won't be coming back on. One thing, you can't tell anyone I told you all this. Why? Will said. The same reason why there is an Official Secrets Act, except in the case of all wizards. If someone who isn't from the wizarding community finds out, they get obliterated. He was met with confused stares, their memories wiped of the event. They were a bit angry over this. So was I when I found out that they go around modifying memories, and then you read the wizarding history books about the witch burning. They do it out of fear, and Voldemort feeds on that fear. They seemed to nod at this. Casting a minor charm to dampen the fire and put the grate in front of it. Casting Lumos on his wand. As they walked up the stairs, Harry said to them honestly, I know it's been a lot to take in, but I felt that I should tell you the truth. I trust you. You let me into your home, and I thank you for that. They bid each other goodnight. The next morning, Will and Sophie woke, wondering if it had all been an extravagant dream. Then they saw the candles sitting beside their bed, and it all came rushing back like a detailed dream. Harry! He trailed off as Will finished his shower. It was all true, he said to Sophie as he hung up his towel. Yes, but he's a good guy. He trusted us, and I think it'll all be all right, Sophie said as she pulled on her clothes. Can you smell cooking? She asked after a moment. Harry was down in the kitchen cooking a full breakfast. He'd gone out and located some wild, non-hallucinogenic mushrooms. He noted to himself that indeed did know the difference. There was fresh orange juice, everything. Sophie and Will stumbled into the kitchen and sat down, only just aware when Harry sat down, serving them up a fully laden plate, each of a full breakfast. Harry, you shouldn't feel bad about last night. It's a Fred and George impression. Harry smiled to himself at his own internal monologue joke. I know, but when someone drops a bombshell on you, well, it made me feel better cooking something up so you could think on a full stomach, Harry said, sitting down with his own full plate. As they finished, Harry asked Will something that he'd been wondering about since later that night. Will, you said last night there were a couple of things you wanted to show me this morning. Yes. Will poured some tea for them, smiling at Sophie. My uncle was in the army for quite a while. Started to write a lot of journals about everything. Weapons, tactics, ideas, that sort of thing. I thought if you wanted, you could have those. He said they should go to someone who needed them in a fight. There's also something else. Will got up and lead them to the back of the house, reaching a blank wall, before sliding a panel up and revealing a lever. Uncle was a little bit paranoid, told me not to go here unless we were under attack or something. So what's in here? Weapons, supposedly. He got them from the army and from other sources. Harry released his basilisk wand from its holder and checked for known traps, then cast a lumos and walked in, locating the light switch. It was a room that covered 2 stories of the house and was as wide it seemed that I was an extra bit added onto the house. There were all kinds of weapons, some Harry vaguely recognized like the bazookas and rocket launchers. Don't think I could reasonably or covertly carry something like that around. There were an assortment of submachine guns, rifles, and a whole wall of various handguns. There seemed to be a small firing range down the back, a gun sitting and waiting. Harry, unaware of the 2 watching him, walked over and checked the clip. Not bothered with the protection, he took aim on the bullseye and fired once, before clicking the safety on. Walking back around the room, he saw a whole load of shotguns and a lot of ammo. He's got enough to fight a small battle here, Harry whispered. Noticing their shocked faces, he pointed to the gun. I have my own, practicing out in the woods. You can't just use a wand. It took a lot of psyching up to be able to hold one confidently. They nodded. Well, Harry, as you can see, I have no use for them. I'm going to let you have it all, for the war. I can't possibly. Yes, you can. If it's half as bad as you described to us. Now, the other surprise was, as they walked out, Harry, you said you wanted to learn about the whiskey and everything. There's a meeting up at the Laird's house. It's about a 30-minute drive. It's a meeting of a lot of the local whiskey producers, tasting, talking, and the like. I said I might be able to put in an appearance. Why don't we go? There's only one problem. What's that? Harry asked earnestly. Well, my uncle, he was set in his ways despite the huge armory in there. He didn't have a name for his whiskey. It was just a picture or drawing. Can I see it? Will showed him when they were back in the kitchen.
I saw that. It reminded me of my dad and my Patronus.
Your dad? Patronus? Sophie said. Will looked confused. My dad was a wizard, and some wizards can turn themselves into animals. Dad's was a stag. My Patronus, a force that wards off evil, is also a stag. Why not call it Prongs Whiskey? It's fitting. It was his nickname. They both smiled at that. Harry, could we, Sophie started. See my Patronus? Of course. Stand over by me. Extracting his wand, Harry said, no longer needing to yell the incantation as he thought of the times outdoors. And with the lofts, Expecto Patronum. A large silvery solid stag exploded out of his basilisk wand and entered through the kitchen before stopping by Harry. Hello, Prongs. No dark creatures for you to fight. You can go. The Patronus form cantered off and disappeared. Wow, they both said. Yeah, he does that to people. So, when do we leave? Will looked at the clock. About an hour to finish up the work in the distillery and check that the power going out didn't affect anything. Then we can go. Dress as you can. They're a bit stuffy. Harry finished helping Will and was followed by Sophie as they went in to get ready. Unshrinking his trunk, he found a nice dark green shirt, and he found with black dragon hide cotton mixed jacket with a note attached in case of formal functions. Harry made a mental note to thank the guys the next time he was in the alley. Pulling it all together, he looked pretty suave. He grabbed his coat, detaching the hood, and wondered whether he needed it. He decided against it. He kept both his wand holsters under the jacket. His dragonhide boots looked good. He looked pretty smart. He met Will and Sophie at the foot of the stairs. That's a pretty suave getup. What's the material? Looks like cotton or something? Sophie said as they walked out to their four-wheel drive. Dragonhide. Aha, it's nice. Sophie smiled, not missing a beat. Thanks, I'm glad you're taking all this so well, Harry said as he got in the 4x4. We've had some weird things happen. We trust you. You trusted us. Now today, mingle, talk, ask questions. Every single person there will want to tell you about their whiskey and give you a try. Just have a sip. Mind you, or spit it out like they do at wine tastings. Otherwise, you'll be legless, despite the big breakfast. That was what I was going to ask. How come there was enough stuff for me to make a big breakfast? Usually there isn't that much. It was practically filling the fridge, Harry said, looking at the back of Sophie's seat, wondering to himself. They arrived at an old estate with a large forest and grounds. There seemed to be quite a collection of people getting out of cars. Will grabbed a couple of bottles of his whiskey, which just had a picture a stag and a white label proclaiming Prongs whiskey on them. Harry smiled, seeing that. When we go in, just tell the truth that you're working with us or something and that you know not much and are interested about all the different kinds of whiskey and learning about distinguishing them, that kind of thing. They'll be all too happy to help and discuss and give you all the information you want, Sophie said as they walked in. So, mingle and talk and flatter them. Pretty much. Have fun, Harry. Harry spent the rest of the day meeting and greeting, as he called it, in his head. All the people he spoke to willingly told him about their whiskey, how they made it, and everything about where they were. The Laird reminded Harry a bit of Dumbledore in the eccentric way, a bit like Malfoy in the full and powerful that screamed, "I've got money." But Harry, after talking to him, found out he was a nice guy managing his estate with his wife. They opened their estate up to all different functions and parties. When talking and tasting with all the various people, he asked them if sometime in the next week or so if he could spend a few days or two with them, learning, gaining knowledge and the like about their businesses. Most were happy as their sons or daughters didn't share the passion for whiskey. They got away from the distillery to the big smoke as soon as they were legal. Many of them had commented. The ones in charge of the biggest plants said they probably couldn't show him much, but he could stop by. All of them were happy for him to impart their information. Harry was careful to be polite and nice with each and all. However, despite being careful with how much he tasted, and frequently at the insistence of the purveyors, drank, he was quite a bit legless by the evening, and was found by the Laird sitting outside looking out at the loch. A cool night. Harry tilted his head to see the Laird. Sir. Hello. Forgive me if I don't get up. Harry smiled warmly at the old guy. He was nowhere near as old as any people from the wizarding world who were old, but he had said he was in the prime of his life. You've indulged yourself carefully. I noticed. He sat himself down on a chair opposite Harry, facing the loch. Harry just nodded, unsure what to say. Much more controlled than any others your age. Yes, very likely. Harry muttered, looking out over the loch, thinking of the Quidditch parties, and holding Seamus's head as he threw up in the boys' laughs. So, lad, why are you out here, staying with the Lofts? Packin', they said. He said, looking at Harry with cool blue eyes. Totally unlike Dumbledore's. These eyes, some part of Harry's mind, registered spoke of hardship, of seeing things like Harry had seen in his young life, of wisdom, not from books, not even like Dumbledore, of something else. Harry turned, pushing the drunkenness from his mind. You have had a life, a long, detailed life with a lot of... Harry trailed off, looking from him to the loch. Life. Yes, many hardships, many things have happened. Not all I'd like to remember, but many brilliant things as well. Brilliance, joy. It all adds up, but you look like you've vemmed all that and have to face more. Harry looked up and started to open his mouth. The Laird held up his hand. You have the stature of someone with a lot on his shoulders. Despite enjoying yourself, I've seen it in myself in the past. Harry just nodded. You asked why? I can't tell you everything. Loose words cost lives. Yes, I know the saying, although I wouldn't have thought to hear it from someone your age. There are people who want me dead. There are others who seek to manipulate me. There is a war. There are people I suspect may or may not be my friends. He looked at the Laird. He simply nodded for him to continue. The war has taken my family. My father, my mother died protecting me. My godfather was killed. And yet those who pretend to keep me safe, do it by keeping me ignorant of the facts. Or they want to lock me away like a criminal. You asked why I'm here. I needed to get away to find something to clear myself, to have some fun, other things. Harry said sadly, thinking sickly of Dumbledore as he recalled the manipulations of Snape and his attacks on his mind. Of the others, he went to brush away a tear and found his face dry. I see, obviously you can't say more. I sympathize. I would say that you shouldn't have to, but I know that if that were true, it wouldn't be happening. Harry merely nodded. I've watched you all night, so I offer you my help. This place as a sanctuary. I can't. I know you can. Come here when you're in trouble or need help. Let me ask you a question. Do the people that you once trusted are the ones who try to lock you away, the manipulators, the false protectors? I have known them, like many others. Harry didn't know what to say. The Lofts and now the Laird. I don't even know your name. The Laird raised his eyebrow. Everyone just referred to you at the Laird. Peter MacDonald Laird. He held out his hand. Harry Potter, journeyman? Harry smiled hopefully. The Laird laughed. Thank you for the offer. I may be back after tonight. I may not. I say forgive me if I don't, or even worse if I turn up with some odd friends or an odd way. Harry was thinking now. This place looked to be part a mansion, part castle, somewhere to run. The Laird, no Peter, regarded him strangely, and then nodded. I won't ask. I've heard things like that in the past. Mr. MacDonald, he got a look. Peter, a smile. Can I ask how? Have you heard things like that? Harry asked, the drunkenness slipping away as he felt for his wand, drawing, rose it awakening him. I can't say much like you, I suppose. I was in the government, security services. I understand. Thank you. You understand. I don't trust everyone even with what I've told you. I don't tell just anyone. I would say don't tell anyone, but Harry yelled at him, I can keep this to myself. Thank you. The sun slipped below the horizon. Now he looked back towards the party. I believe the Lofts will be looking for you people. Start to leave by sundown, he said, rising from his chair. Harry got up a bit unsteadily and followed. Before they got to the door, Harry stopped. Peter, thank you for the offer again. He shook his hand. Thank you, Harry. You may bring some excitement into my life yet. Peter grinned. Excitement comes in many forms. All too many of them are dangerous or worse, deadly. I'll try not to bring the latter, Harry said as opened the door for Peter as he passed Peter Parter. Not too many times at least. Harry just shook his head and went to find the Lofts. They were talking near the bar. Harry, we were just coming to find you. The meeting's starting to quieten down. Feel like heading back? Will said, taking his whip in his arm. Yep, I was just talking to Peter about things, Harry said as he steadied himself on a wall. Peter, Will said as they started to walk out to the 4x4. As they got in, Harry answered, Peter MacDonald, the Laird. Oh, so you had a good time, I trust? Much drink was had, despite my best efforts. Harry grinned. Yes, I suspect a sleep in tomorrow. Harry woke up with none too much of a hangover the next day. Nothing a quick run couldn't fix. He slipped on his dragonhide shoes and took off. This was something he had started to do as he wasn't walking anywhere for long periods of time. The run cleared his head quickly as he drew in the cool, fresh morning air and feeling it ripple around him as he ran. He had enjoyed spending time with the Lofts, but he did have a niggling desire to start exploring again, maybe make his way to a smaller village or hamlet, maybe visit some of the other distillers along the way. He decided that he would stay perhaps another day or two, maybe help Will with some of the potions in the book he liked so much, as he had discovered you didn't need to be a wizard to brew potions. Around lunchtime, he told Will of his idea to help him with some of the potions. Will seemed ecstatic. They went out to the stables, which were simply used for storage of old junk and the like. Harry transfigured some of the stuff into some simply workbenches and areas for making potions. Will and Sophie looked on amazed. Sophie had her divination book and the potions book with her. She didn't want to participate, just to watch. Harry had out in front of him a whole slew of ingredients that he had collected from the woods around the Lofts' property and from their kitchen after consulting the book, so they would know and recognize stuff in the potions and be able to make more or others should they feel the need or wish. They started with a relatively easy hair grow potion, which Harry was surprised Will got right the first time. To stir instead of a wand, they used a stick. According to Harry's apothecary book, it was recommended to not use a magical instrument, something it had been suggested in a few darker potions books that may disrupt a potion depending on the power level of a wand or wizard. The move through several types of potions that day, from everything from the pepper-up potion to the mending potion, which when poured over a wound or known strain or some such, would mend it up. Harry had cut himself a little when selecting the herbs that tried it on his finger. It stung like you wouldn't believe. A little like a knife was being dragged across the wound, and then it was gone. When they had finished and the remaining herbs were in newly transfigured bottles, they had tried a good 20 to 25 potions that could be useful. Most would last when made from anywhere from 2 months to 2 years. It was later that evening in the library that Harry had outlined his ideas about leaving. The Lofts were naturally upset, but understood why Harry wanted to continue his journey. He'd stay until the next day and leave the day after. They said he could take anything he wanted, but Harry knew where he'd be getting things from. Will's armory. Later that night found Harry in the armory with his trunk unshrunk as he gathered up weapons he thought he might use. First were the shotguns. He was very carefully brewing a few potions while he worked around. He had a sample of the wound potion he and Will had brewed earlier and used it, having cut up his hand to extract blood from him to test his more deadly concoctions, biting down as he used the wound potion. Thankfully, he didn't cry out. He heard someone behind him spinning around with both wands in his hand, a stupefy on his lips, before realizing it was Sophie. "Sorry, nerves," Harry muttered before smiling. "I saw you were still up. What are you working on?" "Potions? I thought you would have had enough of those today." "Offensive ones, to put in shotgun cartridges, just in case." Harry motioned ones he had already done. There were a couple of dozen boxes that were filled with different potions. It was evident this wasn't the first time he had been down there doing something. Sophie walked into his trunk and then looked down, realizing what it was. "The day you arrived, I saw a trunk. How come we didn't see you arrive with it?" Sophie said, a wing at her own prediction. "It would look pretty odd if you saw me walking down the road with a trunk, wouldn't it?" Harry grinned as he toned down the fire on his potion, allowing the last of it to turn green, a sicely deathly green, something he had mixed before, never happily. It was a death potion, something definitely illegal. He had used blood in it, something that was guaranteed illegal, but according to his Slytherin book, adding his blood to the potion ensured it was harmless on him. "Here, look." Harry closed the trunk and shrunk it, "so I can put it in my pocket. I didn't use it when I was walking or even camping, just living out of my backpack." "Why?"
I'd rather do it like that than be a pompous-like wizard living in their trunks.
Some trunks can shrink whole houses or sets of rooms into there for travelers and the like. Mine is neither mine. Is older from when there were wizarding journeymen. It has one almost room, quite quiet. Here, look. Harry opened it up and showed her the room. It was currently filled with a few of the rocket launchers and bazookas Harry had taken from the stockpile, unsure of what to do with them at the moment, though. He had thought they may be useful. There was also a crate of C4 and detonators. Equally, he wasn't sure, but from reading the journals left behind by Will's uncle, his name was Justin. It had said for the novice that C4 was an extremely powerful explosive. Some numbers and drawings had showed the blast radius and impact. It looked big, but Harry couldn't think of useful way to use it, apart from walking up to Voldemort and handing it to him and running off, which while it had been amusing to think about, but he had grabbed it. Sophie pulled her head out of the trunk while Harry carefully poured the potion into a jug and carefully cooled it, then spooned a small amount into the cases before sealing them and boxing them. Scourgify! The cauldron was clean and Harry boxed away all the shotgun cases. He had good a full selection in his trunk, some mixed ones to grab in an emergency. He also has many high-powered shotguns from Justin's armory and many other weapons and holsters. "So where are you going after tomorrow?" Sophie said as she sat up on one of the cleared benches. "I'm not sure. Maybe to some of the others that we saw last night. I'm not sure. At first, I'm just gonna walk. I know vaguely what direction to go in, so I'm just gonna take my time, enjoy the areas, the air, everything." Sophie nodded at the information. "Will you keep in contact with us?" Harry turned around, meeting her eyes. "Of course. Why wouldn't I? As soon as I get to a village, I'll send a letter or something. Also, I wanted to say something about that." Harry sat opposite her on one of the Midle benches. "See, the wizarding world uses owls." Sophie grinned. "The books."
Oh, all right.
"To send post? My owl, I told her that she should go explore, have a bit of fun, and the like. So my friends couldn't get her to find me, or Dumbledore would use her to send me a letter. She understood." "Her? Her name's Hedwig. She's a snowy white owl. A magical owl, of course." "So she understands you?" "Of course, they're one of the most intelligent snowy owls. I hope you'll get to see her." Harry smiled fondly. "Well, I must get to sleep. It's been a busy day watching you guys brew stuff all day." Sophie bid goodnight and walked out. Harry spent the next few hours gathering other pieces of equipment and weapons together. He found a selection of sniper rifles near the back of the room, but left them as most wizarding battles happened in close quarters, but he filed the knowledge away for future use. He did take a Kevlar vest. It wouldn't stop a spell, but it would a dagger or poison spike, a pair of military spec sunnies, and some cool night vision goggles, which looked interesting. Everything else He left as he was beginning to run out of room in his trunk. He did grab plenty of ammo for the guns he already had, and plenty of shotgun cases. The next morning, Harry woke cooking another large breakfast for the Lofts. The rest of the day, he spent helping them around with moving some of the barrels with magic. They retired to the library for much of the day. Harry asked them if he could take the remaining of Justin's journals with him to study, promising to return them. Will had said that it wouldn't matter as long as they were used. That's what Justin wanted. Harry then gave them a box. It was one of the boxes of shotgun cartridges, just in case he'd said they contained a mix of killing and stunning potions. In case either Death Eaters or Dumbledore comes. It's unlikely, but you're worried anyway, Sophie had said. Yes, I'm sorry I can't do more, but Harry's heart was aching, telling them this. There wasn't much chance that Death Eaters would come. They went for mass attacks, towns and the like, something he had told Will and Sophie earlier in the week. So it came to the next day, Harry hugged them both and promised to return and walked off back up the driveway.